Hi, I'm Matt Dillahunty. I've spent decades as an activist in the secular community. And during that time, I've had the pleasure to work with a variety of different organizations. Some are focused on the legal side of things, issues like church-state separation. Others are focused on science and education. And others are focused on community building. One group focuses on the individual in a way that is incomparable. That organization is Recovering from Religion, and you can find out more information about them at recoveringfromreligion.org. I was raised in a family that was a mix of Southern Baptist, Protestants, and Catholics. Despite the terms often being interchangeable, we recognized that there was a difference between pastor, priest, preacher, and minister. Pastors and priests are church leaders who may find themselves engaged in preaching or ministering, but their leadership role is the primary. Preachers preach to the masses, and ministers minister to the person. Neither needs to be a church leader. In the broader secular community, the most directly analogous position to a minister are the individuals that volunteer with Recovering from Religion. I'm not aware of any secular organization that truly ministers to individuals the way RFR does. They don't exist to preach. They gather and train volunteers to listen and help, and to assist people who are struggling with their religion or its aftermath after leaving it. They address doubts without debates. They address fears without faith. They don't exist to create atheists or to talk you out of your religion, but that could happen. And unlike other circumstances, if it does happen, you won't find yourself alone and wondering who to talk to next. If you have doubts, and there are consequences to doubting within your community, or there's a potential bias in anybody you might go talk to, if you're going to talk to your minister, if you're going to talk to your family, how do you share those doubts without outing yourself as having a weaker faith? How do you share those doubts without potential consequences? You're not alone. And Recovering from Religion proves that every single day. With related resources like seculartherapy.org, you also have access to professional therapy from sound, scientific, secular therapists instead of religious counselors. So consider supporting Recovering from Religion if they've helped you. And consider supporting them if you genuinely care about helping others. It seems that this process of dealing with religious problems and potential religious trauma are likely to get worse in the coming years, depending on what changes in our culture. Recovering from Religion is one of the best paths to helping during those troubling times. So visit recoveringfromreligion.org for more information and to inquire about possibly volunteering so that we can all do better at helping each other. Thank you. And welcome to the Hang Up. That was an intro that I wanted to get as the start of the message for this show, but also as a non-fundraising bumper that RFR could use. We were talking about doing that earlier. This is the first night, the first unofficial night of the annual Line Recovering from Religion fundraiser. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to run through a couple of quick things. Joining me tonight, the founder of Recovering from Religion and my very good friend, Dr. Darrel Ray. How are you?
I'm doing great. That was an amazing monologue. Thank you. Golly, I'll steal that.
Steal it, use it, to see if you can get anybody to contribute with it, which reminds me, the fundraiser officially starts Saturday at, I think, 2 p.m. And we will have schedules and announcements and all that stuff coming up soon. But tonight, we're actually doing the first of the fundraising. And we actually have matching donations. So if you're used to tuning into the Hang Up, there's not going to be any super chats tonight. The super chats are turned off. This is absolutely 100%. Every penny that you donate is going to Recovering from Religion. All of it. And we have a matching contribution offer here, which is if we hit $4,500 tonight, there's someone who's willing to add $500 to that to get us to 5,000. I think we can do better than that. But people are still tuning in, so I'm going to remind you, the mods are going to remind you, when people show up in here, we are still taking calls just like any other night. We are still going to prioritize theists like any other night. You may also hear from RFR volunteers. You may hear from other people in the community talking about what RFR has meant to them. We will still take calls on all of the other subjects. But the important thing here is this is our chance to set the bar to what I'm going to do tomorrow night on my channel, Friday night back here on this channel with the Golden Mike pre-fundraiser show, and then Saturday in the long final lead up. Arden, do we have a public goal for the entire hoorah that we're putting out yet?
It's shifted a couple times. I think now it was going to be 60, but it might be 75. I'm not entirely sure where Jimmy's landed. I think 75 is going to be easy for us, honestly, but you know, who knows? We'll see.
Last year, I think we raised a little over $60,000, and I ended up with a tattoo. Yep. This year, we're targeting $75,000. But tonight, to hell, if everybody else fails over the weekend, we're getting to $5,000 tonight. So you can just already start clicking right down there below. You can just click donate. You can rack up the numbers right there. And Darrel asked me, he's like, how long are we going to go tonight? And I'm like, I don't know, because in part, it's a caller-driven show. And in part, the show runs long because after we're done with all the callers, we normally do super chats, but we're not doing super chats tonight. So I might just sit here until we get at least $5,000. Who knows? We are already
attitude, Matt.
at $205 out of 60,000, $219 out of 60,000. I'm not going to read them all off every single time, but a huge thank you to those people who got the ball running. You know, sometimes I remember in church when they passed the offering plate, somebody put like $1 or $2 in the offering plate, hoping that it would encourage others to donate. And I always thought it was better just to leave that damn plate empty, to guilt everybody so that everybody had to pass it going, oh, I didn't put anything in there. The problem is that they can go, neither did the person there, neither did the person there. So they don't have to do anything. This way, if you put your money in early, you can guilt other people into doing it. But it shouldn't be about guilt at all. I genuinely, you know, when I talked about it in my opening, I've worked with national organizations and local organizations. There are some wonderful organizations, both at the local level and at the national level. I'm honored to be on the board of some of them. I'm honored to participate in events for some of them, to have speaking gigs and debates and lectures and all that stuff. I don't know anybody who really focuses on ministering to an individual from a secular perspective, to meet them where they are, to find out what need they might be, you know, they have that we might be able to fulfill. And I say we, even though it's not me, but it's us, to find out what need they may be able to fulfill and to do it. There are people out there who feel lost and alone, who feel like they're the only individual in their entire world who has doubts or questions or concerns, who feels left aside, who doesn't know who to talk to about these things. And recovering from religion is critical to that. Darrel, what was it? I know we've talked about all of this about a gazillion D1 times. What was it you saw that made you think, there's a gap and I know how to fill it with recovering from religion?
Well, I had read all the Four Horsemen, you know, Dawkins, Dennett, Harris, and I just felt like and I loved all the books. They were great books. But what I also felt like there was no emphasis on the psychology. And the psychology is where it's all at. That's where the fear of hell comes from. That's where religious trauma comes from. So that was my first opening. And then I published my own book, The God Virus, to fill that gap. And as a result, it led to me having a meeting of people right here in Kansas City where I live, and to just let them vent. I asked people at a back room of an IHOP restaurant, how did religion help you? How did religion hurt you? And 11 people showed up to this meeting, and I only knew one of them. And at the end of the meeting, I saw people crying and hugging each other and being very open with total strangers about how much damage religion had caused them. And that was the minute, 7 p.m. October 26th. I'm sorry, April 26th, I believe it was, 16 years ago. that we started this, came from that one meeting. So that's the quick story. Matt, I probably could elaborate a lot more, but that's probably what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's, I remember when I was, I had done several conventions and spoken at a number of them when Margaret Downey came up to me and said, I don't remember exactly how she phrased it, but anybody who knows her will know that it was phrased perfectly and sweetly, because that is exactly who Margaret Downey is. And the gist of what she was saying is, we all keep coming to these conventions. And at the time, I was probably doing 6 or 7 conventions a year. It has slowed down in part, because of COVID. Things took a dip and are rebuilding. But she's like, we come here and we hear academic lecture, something about the law and church-state separation and everything else. What we need more than anything, she said, was people telling their stories. If you see somebody up on stage and they're telling a story that is similar to yours, nothing's going to build community faster than that. Nothing's going to make people feel less alone than hearing other people tell their stories. And between the 2 or 3 of us there, we came up with a number of different ideas for things that should be happening at conventions, specifically to focus on individual stories and building connections between people. Lots of different ideas that I've talked about over the years. And the one thing that we agreed on is that while recoveringfromreligion.org is not a case of calling in and having someone else share their story so you feel connected, it is an opportunity for all of these people who are never going to get to speak or vent at a convention to talk to someone and say, here's what's going on in my life, and to find out from trained volunteers, you're definitely not alone. My story was similar to that. I've talked to 25 other people in the last week or month or year or whatever it is with a story almost identical to yours. Because if you, look at me. I walked down the aisle at a Baptist church at the age of 5 and accepted Jesus into my heart. I was active in the church all the way up until I graduated high school. And when I say active in the church, I mean, my folks went to church on Sunday morning and occasional Sunday nights, or maybe a Wednesday night, from time to time, but my dad was working multiple jobs. I went Sunday morning, Sunday night. Monday night was visitation. I can't remember exactly what we did Tuesday night. Wednesday night was services. Thursday night was youth group. Then there was extra mission trips and things on the weekend. And I was never made to go. It's not like my parents made me go. I went more than they did because that's where my friends were. That's where my community was. And this is where my passion was for, hey, I need to be able to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it's the power unto salvation. I need to not be ashamed of this. I need to be ready at all times to provide a reason for the faith that's within me. Boom, 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 boom. I'm an atheist because I took this shit seriously. And I find that the vast majority of theists who call into these shows to try to defend what they believe are believers in part because they haven't taken it seriously enough. Mm-hmm. They haven't considered, what if I'm wrong? How do I know this is true? Do I have good reason for this? And in my community, who could I go to? I had some questions. I had an uncle who was a missionary. I went to him about some questions about morality. But at the time, it wasn't, I'm having doubts, can you help me? It is, hey, I have a roommate who's an atheist, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to talk to that roommate. Telling my personal testimony isn't going to do it. What can I do? And that's where he suggested talking about morality. Darrel, when someone decides that they want to be a volunteer with RFR, what's the process from them submitting an application to finally getting started helping people?
Well, first of all, they hit the button on our website, the volunteer button, and then they fill out an application, which is, you would think, wouldn't be as comprehensive as it is, but we really ask you to answer a lot of questions on that volunteer application. And then once you've gone through that process, then you are assigned someone to interview you. And we have a pretty comprehensive interview. It's not long, 30 to 45 minutes interview.
I failed.
And Yeah, I remember you volunteered at one point in time. Matt volunteered, but he didn't make the cut, I guess you could say.
I did
I
not.
think he voluntarily didn't make the cut. It wasn't because we cut him or anything,
You should have.
but yeah, and once well, a lot of people, we have all these steps because we want people to know for sure they want to do this. And a lot of people drop out. They fill out the application and say, "Oh, this isn't for me," or they get the interview, and one of our interviewers says, "Are you sure this is for you?" And but once you get through those steps, then you go into self-paced training, which is about 4 to 8 hours of self-paced training, and it's good shit, good stuff. You learn a lot about how to listen to people, how to respond to people who are in crisis, and how not to put your own beliefs, ideas, worldviews into the conversation, because that's really important. We are not here to convert or deconvert. And then you get a one-on-one trainer, and you go through another 4 hours or so of one-on-one training. And once you get through with that, then you step into kind of peer supervised practice, and then ultimately you're handed over. You're allowed to touch our clients, but we don't let people talk to clients unless we are highly confident that they have a minimum level of skill. And these skills are something you have to learn. You don't learn them normally in more day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And then once you do, I'm just reading through here today, Matt, where's these chats coming from? You got to have your head ready as a volunteer to take a chat from Rio de Janeiro, from North Carolina, from Dallas, Texas, from Cincinnati, Ohio, from here's a cool one. Tallinn in Estonia. We got a Estonia chat today. Provence, France. So you got to be ready. Italy. We had Italy at San Antonio. You don't know where the next chat's coming from, and you have to have your mind ready, so to speak, to be able to listen to people really carefully. And maybe their first language is not English.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody has proficiency, but anyway, that's what happens. How you get into it, Matt?
Yeah, it's when I say I didn't make the cut, I realized pretty quickly that I was not going to make the cut. One of the things, I wanted to do it. I would love to do it if I could occasionally, like once in a blue moon, take a call. I'd be happy to. Instead, I think I'm better in a sort of secondary or advisory capacity, like I am with the Clergy Project, because I'm not a part of the Clergy Project and involved in it, but on more than one occasion. By the way, for those who aren't familiar, the Clergy Project is an organization for people who are currently or formerly ministers, but who aren't out yet. And they're anonymous. They're in an online forum and discussion groups, and they maintain their anonymity. Jerry DeWitt was one of the first Clergy Project individuals to come out publicly and say his name and everything else. But on several occasions, I've been contacted by the Clergy Project because somebody there was like, "Hey, can you put me in touch with Matt to have a conversation?" Because especially with clergy people, even though I was not clergy, I was working to become clergy. And when I found my way out, and that resonates really well with a number of them. So, and I've made some friends over the year through that. When I started doing the process and applied and everything else, I think it became clear this is going to be a bigger demand on my time potentially than I want to, and I may not have the right temperament for this. Now, for those who don't know, for those who've only watched on heated discussions on the line where I'm like, "No, you're going to answer the fucking question that I asked you, or we're not moving." Yes. You should also maybe go watch the actual public debates that I do that are structured and formal, where you have honest interlocutors instead of trolls. As a matter of fact, on May 24th on my personal channel, tomorrow night we're doing something on my personal channel for RFR, but on May 24th, I'm doing a debate with Matthew from Oxford, the young gentleman that's called in a couple of times. We worked out all of the details except for the tech stuff, and we'll have announcements on that. But despite the fact that I am predominantly in debate mode, if you were actually to hang out with me and, like, let's say you showed up with your best friend who was religious, who wanted to have a conversation, I'd say the odds of it turning into a heated debate where people are raising their voices or anything else, incredibly low. That's not how things go in person. When the anonymity and distance of a phone call conversation or an internet conversation are there, and the options for trolling and all of that, the me that you see on this is me, but you don't get to see me very often having good one-on-one conversations that might count as kind of counseling or ministering and things like that. I can do it, but I think there are people who are much better suited to it. And it became clear pretty quickly that I'd rather let them create volunteers that already possess those skills than me trying to learn them from scratch or change the way I think about it, because it's very difficult for me when somebody says something that is obviously bullshit and false for me to not say that is bullshit and false. I mean, it is a brutal honesty that isn't always best for counseling. And so I love what RFR does, and I think I'm best used pointing people in that direction. If you don't want to have arguments with people like me, and you still want to deal with your religion or your religious trauma, you're finding a way out, go to RFR. They're not going to debate you.
Well, Matt, we love the support we get from you and the way in which you support us. And every now and then, very frequently, we get people chatting in or calling in and say, I heard about you guys from Matt. And Matt knows every now and then I'll shoot him an email or a text and say, hey, Matt, this person found us through you. Thank you. I don't know, probably dozens of times a year that happens. I don't send them to you every time, but you do get them. You don't. I send them to you, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Darrel messaged me. And yeah, I saw your note, Glenda. You and I could have a counseling session together and kind of keep each other steady so that we didn't have to go, ah! But Glenda's in chat as well. Hey, so first of all, I see we've already raised $789. Now that's,
wow.
We're 25 minutes in. And if we want to hit $4,500, we've got to do way more than $1,000 an hour, because the plan isn't to sit here necessarily for 4 hours. I mean, I'll tell you what, this is going to be, maybe I can't say this. Maybe I shouldn't say this. If somebody out there is really bothered by this show or does not want it to go on and on and on, if you get us to $4,500 by 7 o'clock, I'll end the show at 8. If you get us to $4,500 by 7 o'clock, so in the next 35 minutes, I'll end the show 1 hour later. If not, you may never stop us. And if you're one of those people that want the show to go on and on and on, you got to donate to help get those numbers up, but make it measured. Because if we go to 701 and then it rolls up to 4,500, hell, I might do 17 hours. You never know. You guys are going to think I'm Forrest Falcai. I have taken Forrest and Erica and rolled them all together into one advocate for RFR. We've got calls on the line I want to get to. There are atheists calling about secular morality. There are theists calling about objective morality and things like that. There was an individual that called saying they want to debate trans rights activism, and I'd be willing to bet a sizable amount of money that you're the dude I blocked from my Twitch chat today. As I told you in Twitch chat, you should probably call the Transatlantic Call-In Show, which airs tomorrow, or you can book a debate. But tonight is about RFR, and I'm not going to be distracting or detracting from that with distractions about how you're butthurt by lying and claiming that you are a trans rights activist from 2015 to 2022 while not understanding the very basics of gender. So not worth my audience's time this evening. We're raising money for a good cause. You can get yourself further educated another night there, jib jab. All right. We have a theist, Mladen, calling in from Croatia. I hope I pronounced your name right. You're on with Dr. Darrel Ray and Matt Dillahunty. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How can we help?
Well, I'm a recovering Christian, and your show has been really helpful in turning my perspective into this other side, the atheist perspective.
Mhm.
Now I'm calling about objective morality, and if there's such a thing.
Depending on what you mean, I have no reason to think that any such thing exists.
Okay. So I believe that there are three sources where morality can come from. Two of them being culture or an individual, but this makes morality relative based on either the culture or the individual. So the third would be God, but we don't know what God would mean as in morality.
So you're already, and first of all, I'm going to have to clarify some things and ask some questions because I understand you're coming from Croatia, so English isn't your primary language, and English is the only language I speak, and perhaps not particularly well. So I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. I'm glad you didn't mention absolute, because I don't think you can have absolute anything as far, or absolute certainty about anything. When it comes to morality, I'm not a moral relativist in that I don't think something is moral or not based on what a culture or an individual says. When I say that there's no such thing as objective morality, when I talk about morality, I'm talking about the well-being of people generally. But when I say it's not objective, I mean there's no reason that that is what morality has to mean or why we should care about that. But what I am saying is if we do care about well-being, and we are going to say morality is about well-being, then after that, the rest of it isn't subjective. There are physical facts about us. We live in a universe where actions have consequences. They have identifiable, detectable consequences. And those consequences either factually, objectively improve our lives or diminish our lives. And so the only thing that is subjective is the foundation to say, hey, I want to advocate for those things that make life better. And after that, we can make determinations once we've defined things to say, hey, it's not subjective. It is an objective assessment or a non-subjective assessment that the consequences of this action make people's lives better. Education is a moral good. And so when we say, what is the source of morality? When I talk about well-being, somebody can say, oh, I don't think morality is well-being. I think morality is this other thing. And now we're not having a conversation about morality, mine or theirs. We're having a conversation about what we're going to describe or what we're going to set as the foundation for it. But if you and I agree that whether we call it what morality or not, we would like a better world, and then we define the characteristics we find as better, that health is generally preferable to sickness, that living is generally preferable to dying, that happiness is generally preferable to misery, that individual autonomy is preferable to, a dictatorial control and denial of rights. Once we agree on those things, everything else becomes, okay, does this improve life or not? And it's not just a matter of opinion.
All right. That was very well put together, Matt.
Thank you.
So how would we then base what is good and what is bad? Like, where would be the source? I'm sorry if I didn't really understand that part.
Okay. So let's set aside the word morality for a second. And let's just say you and I agree that we have a goal of reducing suffering because we agree that life is better if we reduce suffering. Once we have that goal, we can look at every single possible action or policy or anything and determine by actual data whether or not that increases suffering or decreases suffering. Are we together so far on that?
Together, yes.
Okay. So if we can agree on all that, then the only objection that somebody really has is, okay, I agree this reduces suffering, or I agree this increases suffering, but I don't think that's morality. And my answer to that is, I don't care if you think it's morality. I'm going to call it morality. But if you and I agree that this is better and you don't want to say it's moral, great. What is it that you're describing as moral in the first place so that I can figure out what I think about it? Because when I talk to theists, for example, they're going to say morality is that which is consistent with the mind of God. And that's a big problem because I'm not aware of any God. I'm not aware of what any God's mind is. And I have no idea whether or not I would agree or disagree with a God on what is moral. And so if I define morality as that which makes the world better, it's about the well-being of thinking creatures, then it becomes a more data-driven, fact-based assessment. And the only subjective thing is, why do we care about that at all?
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Very well put together.
Thanks. If you go on YouTube, you can search for a lecture that I gave called The Superiority of Secular Morality, and it goes into all this in greater detail. But the important thing is this. Even if you don't know, even if I don't know, even if we're not sure what should count as morality or what shouldn't, I'm advocating for secular humanist principles backed up by scientific skepticism and good evidence standards to try to make the world better. And while better, I'm putting air quotes there, may not be particularly well defined, that we can still discuss. I'm not aware of any objection to secular morality by any religious individual where they actually have proposed a solution to that problem that requires religion or a God. There are no problems that they can actually solve. Oh, well, Matt, there's no reason for me to care about well-being. Correct. And there's no reason for me to care about what your God thinks. Pointing to your God doesn't solve a problem. It changes the problem. And at least as long as we're talking about well-being, we're talking about something that we know to be an actual part of reality. And if we talk about a God, I don't know that to be an actual part of reality at all. And when people say, oh, this is what God wants, how am I supposed to know that that's what God wants? And why would that make it correct? And what I find most of the time is religious individuals are so terrified of what they view as moral relativism that they'd rather have someone spoon feed them the answers and pretend that they got it from on high, when really they're doing, in most cases, the same thing the rest of us are doing. It's going with your gut impression. It's just that their gut has been guided by indoctrination and religion, and my gut has been guided by empathy and education.
I see your point. I have nothing to add to this. This sounds really well. I have to think about it a little bit to process it.
Absolutely. I appreciate the call and the kind words. And if you have more questions, call us back another time, and you can always email as well. And by the way, That's a good question to ask. Darrel, Mladen is having questions, and he's in Croatia. What's the best RFR resource for him to be making use of from Croatia?
Mladen, if you go to our resource page, go to Recover from Religion, and you'll see there's a resources, and you can search there. And the very questions you've been asking, we've got articles. We've probably even got a link to Matt's lecture, probably. We've got all sorts of stuff by Matt in there. But it's far bigger than that. So you might find interesting things to read or watch within our own resource page. And I will just echo everything Matt said. Good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I wish you the best, and call us back if you have more. Cheers. Well, that's a great way to start the show with a call.
Yeah. And we just blew past 1,000. We're at 1,235, I think. That's pretty cool.
$1,235 in the first 35 minutes. That's pretty good. And right now, though, I noticed that there are more dollars donated than there are people currently watching. So if everybody watching had donated $1, we would have easily already gotten to 1,100. Now, I understand a good many of you are in America and you're dealing with the aftermath of the election and the terror of tariffs and maybe sweating what's happening to your 401k and will you have any due process when they come to tell you that you haven't paid your dues and everything else. But we're closing in, as Morgan said, on nearly $2,000 an hour. Now, I understand I've never made $2,000 an hour. I've made more than that, and I've made much, much less than that, but I've never made exactly $2,000 an hour. However, when you take a look at the people who are currently running the United States, $2,000 is money that they don't throw it away because these guys don't give any money away to anybody ever.
Right.
But I'm pretty sure that this is pocket change at best, like a penny. Wouldn't even notice if $2,000 went missing, which I think is why so many people want to cozy up to billionaires to see if, can I get some of the pennies that you're dropping? Because a penny to you is a life savings to the rest of us.
Yeah.
And
right.
so I want to make it very clear. Any of you who are not financially stable, you should not be donating to anyone anywhere. That's not what this is for. For any of you who can do so, who feel that RFR is doing good work and want to support that, now is the time to do it. Tonight's goal, $4,500, and it will add on a $500 matching donation to get us to the 5,000 mark. We greatly appreciate everybody. I'm watching donations come in, and we did another $100 just in the time I was rambling about that. We got more calls if you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. So Vicki's calling from the UK. Vicki's a theist. Pronouns are she, her. Please, can I have a structured discussion on what I believe God is that appears to be the closest thing to the truth? I want to get feedback for a sincere consideration of what my faith is at the moment. Hey, Vicki, how are you? You're on with Dr. Darrel Ray and me.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. Please bear with me. I might sort of rant.
Sure.
Yeah, I was hoping to kind of get, I guess, an honest opinion about what I think, for want of a better term, is what God is.
Okay.
And
So
my
I want you to get
perception
into it.
Oh, sorry.
No. And by the way, there's a delay, and so it's going to just happen. I definitely want to, and I want you to get to that, and I want to be able to get Darrel in addition to me. So probably the best thing to do is to say, tell us what you think God is and why you think that is both an accurate why you think that's an accurate description of what is real. Does that make sense?
So, yeah.
Cool.
So just on the basis of what reality is, first of all, is, and I firmly believe this, is what our repetitive thought is. So what we think constantly becomes a habit, and that is our reality. And it's kind of why we all have different perspectives on things and why everyone has a different experience, because we have a different reality. So the people who are very religious, they'll constantly be thinking in a way that's different to someone who isn't religious. And so with my family, we had about 3-4 leaders of faith in one denomination of Christianity or another. And it's very encouraging to see people with faith, because there's something that they have a genuine appreciation for when it comes to their life, like in a way that sometimes you can take for granted. They're really looking to appreciate what it is that their God has given them. And for me, what I think God is a combination of science and evolution, where I think when the Big Bang happened, basically everything that we perceive is it's actually on the lateral plane. So we have time is something that we see as something happening one scenario or instance after another. I think it's already happened and we just sort of experience as we do. But I also think that if evolution is a pattern that we're going to go by, you have people, showing how it is that one species developed into another. I'm thinking that that's how it would apply to the very beginning, like the very first instance of a molecule, or for want of a better term, a piece of existence, having evolved over and over and over again. I kind of see God as a scientist, like wanting to do the experiment over and over and over again, but with different results. So, like, as in each person, when we die, what happens is it's like a blink of an eye. It's something that God has experienced our life through us, kind of takes the information that they gathered from our existence and just repeats over and over, because it's the variety that builds the evolution. So it's like a constant spiraling of evolution from a point of something existing and to whatever you want to call the end, if it is an end at all, just something that wants to continue because it likes to build up and up like evolution does. I hope that makes sense.
I'll apologize, Vicki. No, it doesn't. I don't mean that in any way to be rude. I took a lot of notes.
No.
So I don't agree with one of the foundational things you said, which is that we all have a different reality. I would say we share a reality, and some people have different interpretations of reality, but your interpretation of reality isn't real. Like if there are people who are stalkers who think that somebody loves them when they don't. And so in their interpretation of reality, they think someone loves them, but in fact, that is simply not true. And so when you say we all have our own reality, are you suggesting that for some people, like there actually is a God and for others there's not? Or are you just saying that whether there's a God or not, there are people who believe and disbelieve?
The second, yeah. It's not that there will be an existence in one reality and then.
Okay. Well, there's a bunch of stuff you said about, I don't really know where to begin for some of this, because you're saying when the Big Bang happened, you think it already happened and we experience it, and evolution is a pattern that we go by, and you're thinking this would apply to the beginning and explain the first existence of a molecule, and God, having evolved over and over again, is a scientist. And when we die, it's like a blink of an eye, and God experiences this through us and repeats it over and over again. And then there's something about the spiraling of evolution and something that wants to continue. I think the most charitable thing I can put together, Vicki, is that you're trying to use concepts like evolution, but in a way that doesn't match, as if it's an analogy for something, because evolution doesn't spiral and it doesn't have a goal. And while it is, evolution is merely change, biological evolution is merely change that is being filtered by the changing facts of reality. As the climate in different areas changes, it determines which altered species are more likely to survive and thrive and pass on their genes. I'm still not clear on what you think God is and why you think it's real. I'm more clear on, and I'm still not clear on what you think happens after we die, which I don't know how you or anybody else could possibly know that, but I'm still wondering, what is God and why do you think he's real? Are you there? I'm not hearing you, and I see you're calling the web client. If you're on your cell phone, you may have to tap your phone to wake it up, and then tap the browser that you're calling in from.
Hello?
To wake that. Yep, you're back. I hear you now, Vicki. Or I did.
Oh, hi, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm still not clear on what you think God is or why you think God is real.
So I just want to start off, but before I explain why, by I will absolutely understand any sort of skepticism with this, and this is a very personal experience. So for myself, like obviously having experienced it, I can be 100% sure that it happened. And the only reason why I know that it did for certain happen is because another person experienced it, and I'll explain. So my sister and I, we have about 6 years difference between us. There was one night where we were both asleep in bed and in our own separate rooms. There was a sound of footsteps that was walking down the hall, and I didn't hear anything for about 5-6 seconds. And very suddenly, there was something that sat on my mattress, like it made a deep impression into my mattress, and it let out a huge breath of air through my ear, and it started choking me, whatever this thing was. I had bruises on my neck, and where my arms had been sort of locked into the sides of my ribs, I had like bruises from where my elbows were. So it was quite violent, whatever that was. The next morning, my sister, she's maybe like 8 at this point, was shaking uncontrollably. I was rushing out the door to get to school and still processing all this, and got back home, and she'd explained to me that there was an apparition that had appeared in her room, a small ghost child that had appeared in her room close to her face. She'd heard the footsteps as well. So she saw this, but while I was choking about the same time, because we're sort of comparing the duration of it, this child told her to shush, like brought the finger up to its mouth and told her to shush. I was saying a Hail Mary, because at that point I wasn't actually religious. I was more verging on an atheist projectile. I had a lot of my parents pushing religion onto me and rebelling against it. So when I say this prayer, it's something that released what I was experiencing. It just stuck with me. So it wasn't something that I was like immediately, this is proof that there is God. However, there were other things that would happen later on that made me question what it was that I thought was just what people assumed was like paranormal activity is the only thing I can kind of really describe it as. I still think that there's a science behind it. I think that it's kind of part of how I see time. I think it's a planes thing. It's layered.
So Vicki?
Things.
Yeah. So I promise I'm not trying to deflect from this. I still don't necessarily know what you mean by God or why you believe in God. I know you're working to potentially get to that, and I'd like to get Darrel's thoughts on this as well. But what you're describing is something that may not have an actual explanation that we're able to garner, something that we have no way of investigating because we can't repeat circumstances and everything else, but is consistent with what my lay understanding of night terrors, sleep paralysis, and a number of other potential psychological, I don't even know what the right term is, conditions or whatever, can produce. And I wanted to get, now nobody's diagnosing you, that would be completely irresponsible, but I want to get Darrel's thoughts on this about, when you hear stories like this, Darrel, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm sure it was a terror. I'm muted?
You weren't. I'm wrong. Go ahead.
Okay. Vicki, I'm sure the experience was terrorizing to you. That comes across very clearly. What caused it, how it happened, nobody knows. And what we hear from people all over the world for thousands of years is they have experiences like what you've had. And there's no way to explain them because there's no way to verify it scientifically, to verify it. But the but it is your personal experience. You'll have to figure out how best to interpret that. I don't think it answers Matt's fundamental question, though, about the God that you're talking about. I don't even know how what your experience is relates to any God. You were doing a Hail Mary, but I could probably point to many people who prayed to Allah, who have prayed to Buddha or whatever. They had the same result. So simply saying a prayer, which is something that a lot of people would do, but there are almost always, very few Buddhists pray a Hail Mary when they're in trouble, when they're having an experience like you had. It's almost always culturally specific, if you will, and that's what I hear. Your culturally specific response to this traumatic experience was to pray to the God that you're most familiar with. In this case, not the God. You're praying to Mary, one of the four gods of Catholicism. So
What I'm wondering is, you had this experience, and I'm always, when people talk about experiences they had while sleeping, it's extra dubious. Like, if you're wide awake, you've been awake all day, and you're standing there with a whole bunch of other people, and a spirit, tries to choke you, or that's the impression that you have, or your understanding of that image, that doesn't seem to happen, or at least
right,
with much less frequency. And so here you are in a sleep state where we know the brain is often altered, where there are things like sleep paralysis, night terrors, where there is often a disconnect between thinking systems within the brain. And so I'm wondering, for an experience like this, how do you go from this happened to me to therefore there's some kind of God? Because I still don't know what God we're talking about.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily how I've concluded that there is a God. It just meant that I was no longer certain that it was not possible to have that kind of spiritual deity, for want of a better term. So at that point in time, where most of my thought process was. Sorry, yeah.
How does having an experience for which you don't have an explanation demonstrate that spiritual things or gods are possible?
It didn't, but it left my mind open to it. So it was at that point that it allowed me to question things in a different way. Most of the time, when I came to a lot of my thoughts about religion, it was just flat out no, because I saw what my family either said that they believed and what I saw hypocritically what was going on versus what it was that I believe now. It's not like I all of a sudden was like, okay, I'm a believer because this thing happened to me. It's more like I was agnostic at that point.
Let's do this then, Vicki, because while this story is interesting, and I would definitely recommend, exploring it to the extent you can, and maybe talking to some doctors or therapists. But what we really need, especially because we're on a clock here, and there's like 4 or 5 other people that are on hold. I just need to know, what do you mean by God, and why are you convinced that is real? And as a side note for the fundraiser, we are closing in on $2,000. Let's see if we can get there soon.
So I think this is in part why I called, is because when I'm trying to put together the reasons why I believe that there is a God right now, there's it's at such an infantile stage that I'm trying to figure out which direction I need to go to sort of logic this thing out. So right now, what I've got is my own personal experiences aside. The thing that I see as why I think that there is a God is because the way that we're still seeing and developing scientific theories, mostly in quantum physics, it's sort of developed into further things after string theory. There's like other things that go after that. All of these discoveries that we're making, it kind of makes me assume that.
You seem really nice. I like you. For almost anybody else, I would be incredibly irritated at this moment. And I saw a cool meme this morning, which is evidently it's rude to reach out and touch someone on the forehead and say skip intro. I get that you're trying to describe this, but what you just said when I said, what God are we talking about and why, is you skipped over the what God, anything at all that tells me anything about what we're talking about. And then what you said is the thing that I see as why, because the way we're still seeing and developing scientific theories in quantum physics and string theory, you've now left the realm of talking about God or why to believe God, because we are still discovering things about the world for sure. There is no mathematical variable for a God or the supernatural, and there is nothing within quantum physics or string theory, which, by the way, neither of which may be robust, testable, and falsifiable sciences in every regard. But there's nothing in quantum physics or string theory that in any way supports any notion of God that I've ever been presented with. And so it seems like, and this is not remotely an insult, I'm actually applauding you. You're looking at the world and going, holy crap, something happened. I don't understand it. There's this and I don't understand it. Then I look around and I see these people and they don't understand it. And then my family is convinced there's a God. And these people here are convinced there's a God. I think they're wrong in what God needs and wants, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to address it. There's just so many things and I'm so overwhelmed. And look, when you look, we're still figuring out quantum mechanics and quantum physics and string theory and dark matter and all these things. There's so much out there. Maybe somewhere out there in the stuff we don't know is something that could qualify as a God. Is that a fair assessment of what you're trying to do? You may have to tap your phone again to stop the timeout.
Am I back yet?
I don't know.
You're back. You're back.
Yeah, you are. You are.
Cool. Sorry.
Would you say that was a fair assessment of kind of what you're trying to do? Maybe there's a God out there and the things we don't know yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the closest point that I'm at right now. Yeah.
Cool. That is perfectly normal. And it is a very tempting way to conduct a search for a God and to keep an open mind. But let me tell you, my mind is not closed to the possibility that there is some God out there. But I'm waiting for someone to demonstrate that it is in fact possible before I waste more time investigating a claim that might be impossible. To date, nobody's demonstrated that. Well, I'm getting there. To date, nobody has ever demonstrated that anything supernatural is even possible, and I have no idea how they would do that, but that's not my problem to solve. It's the problem for the people who are claiming they believe the supernatural is real and that their belief is warranted. Because if they're claiming to have a warranted belief for something that has never been demonstrated to be possible, they should be able to show that it is in fact possible and show why it should be considered a candidate explanation. And in the entire history of the world, to my knowledge, nobody has done that. And I've been debating this for 20 years in churches and on stages in front of thousands of people with some of the best minds in apologetics. And none of them have even taken the step of showing that the supernatural is possible. Instead, they keep doing what you're doing, only in a much broader sense of, well, I prayed and this happened. I prayed and this happened. Somebody else prayed and this happened. And we experienced this and this happened. And all of these things, it just can't all be, we're wrong or it's brain stuff or whatever. There just has to be something more. And that is fallacious because they've made no demonstration that there must be something more or that something more is even possible. All they've said is, I just can't believe that this could possibly happen in reality. There must be something more. And whether or not they can or can't believe it is their failing, not the fault of reality.
You're familiar with the term God of the gaps?
Sorry.
Vicki, are you familiar with the God of...
There's the last.
Okay, I was just saying, are you familiar with the God of the Gaps argument?
No, what is that?
Well, from what I can hear, you're engaging in a God of the Gaps approach to this. You keep inserting God whenever you don't understand something, and you acknowledge that there's lots of things that we now understand that we may not have understood 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 2,000 years ago. The gaps, but as science and our understanding of the physical world gets better, those gaps get smaller and smaller. There's less room for God to be in there. And you keep pushing the God in that crack. Wherever you find a crack, well, it must be God, or hopefully it is God. I'll
And
let
you're in good
I'll let
company.
Matt chime in there.
You're in
Yeah,
good company
very good
doing that
company.
because that's what people have done forever. When we didn't know how thunder or lightning worked, people proposed that it came from the gods. And then we figured out, oh, there's, electrons and this and different electrical potentials. When we didn't understand how life began, and we still don't necessarily know how life began, but when we weren't even in the ballpark of understanding what was possible or what explains the diversity of life, we credited gods for creating it. And then we discovered, oh, there's self-replicating molecules that are subject to change, and given enough time, they can change broadly. And then they're acted upon by natural selection, the natural pressures of, if you have offspring that lack the genetic traits that allow them to survive a particularly harsh winter, then they don't produce offspring. The ones that can survive that harsh winter do produce offspring, and they're more likely to pass on those genes. We built those understandings, whereas while we didn't know, people said, oh, it must be a god. And you're following that same route of temptation, which is, oh, I had an experience in a dream, or somebody had this experience here, or I have a former friend of mine. His dad used to say, I had a headache, so I said a prayer and I took an aspirin, and the headache went away. And the question is, okay, was it the prayer, the aspirin? Was it a combination? How do we tell? And the problem that we have is that whenever we investigate these things, we don't even get to consider the supernatural as a candidate explanation until somebody demonstrates that it should be considered a candidate explanation. And so the God of the Gaps thing, which, by the way, you can Google and look up, it is a fallacy where the believers, advocates, insert God into gaps in our knowledge. The problem here is that when we fill that gap with understanding, in the entire history of our species, at no point has the right answer been confirmed to be magic or supernatural. Instead, the right answer is always natural and scientific. But when we have a gap in our knowledge and we fill it in, that means there's two new gaps, one on either side of that one, another. So what you're getting is smaller and smaller gaps, but you're getting many more of them. And this is why we're driven to recognize that every new thing we learn gives us the opportunity to find more things that we need to learn. And in the entire history of the world, the right answer has never been confirmed to be magic or supernatural. That doesn't mean it won't be, and it doesn't mean it can't be. But the question remains, what hope is there that in the vast areas of things we don't know, there's a God? And if there is, why is that God hiding in the areas we don't know and don't understand? Instead of just saying, hi, I'm God, here I am.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you guys have said really makes sense to me. There was an experiment that was done in there were these scientists from Cambridge that oversaw this experiment that was done in the south of England, and I cannot recall for the life of me what it's called. But essentially, I'm gonna see if I can find it in my search history and come back to you guys at some point. It was basically a group of scientists with a group of what do you call them, psychics, but mediums, the ones who can see through the veil,
The ones
apparently.
who claim that they can talk
down.
with the dead and never demonstrate that they can?
Yeah. So these scientists from Cambridge were going over there to question this thing that they said that they could do. And there was two things that they did in this experiment and kept consistent throughout, which they used the same room and the same tools. And the tools were this machine that was used, that was constructed with very basic materials. There was glass, a particular type of quartz crystal, and something else that helped to conduct like electricity through this particular piece of glass and crystal. And then that was on the center of the round table that everyone sat around. And behind everyone, away from the group, and far enough that someone would need to get up and walk for at least, 20 seconds to get to this box, to get to this place. It was a box, and it was a locked box. It had no bottom, top hole, nothing that you could sort of maneuver to trick and get things into. And this group of scientists were watching the mediums conduct a seance, for want of a better term, where there was a woman who came through, and the place that they were at, she was a local person of the 1800s, I believe. I really have to double check to see what this was. But essentially, what this group consistently did was call people from the beyond, and there would be an image that would come through. They made contact, apparently, through this machine with people from even as far back as ancient Roman times. They had something to verify these things that would come through the box. There was a newspaper that was revealed to have appeared in this box, and it had the same ink type that was used in that time, same paper quality. They carbon dated it to see what it was.
I'm going to stop you here because you're basically, are you suggesting that scientists from Cambridge set up a box and brought in some psychics who caused things to manifest within the box that were then carbon dated to particular dates?
I think it was the psychics who invited the scientists because they were making these claims. So the scientists went to go test them out. Yeah.
We don't have any way to assess this right now without a link. I would highly recommend that you go look up Project Alpha and the film An Honest Liar, which is the story of James Randi's life. And those two together will lead you to a study of the James Randi Educational Foundation and parapsychological research and paranormal research, because I think I recall something similar to what you described, but without details and confirmation, I can't possibly get into it here today. But I guarantee you, if what you're describing is even close to accurate of what the scientists were reporting, there are a dozen skeptic organizations that have gone through this with a fine-tooth comb that can report on it. I'm just not able to do it here on the show, but let's assume for a second that we were able to bring in a psychic and they were able to cause something to manifest in a box on a table, and all of us were standing there, and all of us looked and saw the box was empty, and all of us stood 20 feet away, and they said something, and the box had something in it. What conclusion could we possibly draw from that?
So that's what I think might have been like the point of the carbon dating, was that was supposed to be the proof of this is the item that is legitimate. I thought that was what was supposed to happen. No.
We can't draw any conclusion from that. Even if they caused something to manifest that was carbon dated to, 5,000 years old. So what? That doesn't tell us what happened or why, and it doesn't confirm that something supernatural happened. It just confirmed that something we don't know happened. This is why, instead of scientists, or in addition to scientists, the JREF and others hired magicians, people like me, to actually people much better than me. I am a magician in addition to the other things, but people who know about trickery to specifically catch out deception. And what James Randi did with Project Alpha is he sent a couple of magicians to fool the scientists, to convince the scientists that they actually had paranormal abilities. And they were successful to the point that they were about to do a press conference to confirm that they had actually confirmed psychic powers. The scientists were calling a press conference to say, we've confirmed psychic powers. And that's when James Randi grabbed the two magicians that he had sent in to fool them and did a press conference before theirs to say they're about to claim that they've confirmed psychic power, but they have not. These are two magicians. We intentionally went out and tricked them. And what makes it really sad is that Randi was in contact with the scientists saying, you should try this, you should do this, you should make sure that this test protocol is used, you should make sure this test protocol is used. Under no circumstances should you allow them to touch these things or whatever else. So he was guiding them on how to bust the magicians. And he had also given instructions to the magicians that if anybody ever asked you, are you faking this? Are you engaged in just mundane trickery? They had to answer yes and had to stop right there. They were never asked. It never came up. It was never proposed as a possibility. And the scientists repeatedly failed to follow the guidance that Randi had given them. And this is one of the reasons scientists are really good at testing for things that they already know about. They have no expertise in trickery, which is why you wanted magicians involved. And so I highly recommend that in addition, hey, look up the study you were talking about, send it to me in email, and definitely go take a look at Project Alpha and An Honest Liar, and look up stuff like that, because even the best case scenario wouldn't confirm the supernatural. It would just be, wow, something happened and we don't know why. Maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's not. How do we tell? We can't. And yet every time we figured out what the right answer is, still not magic, and trickery comes up more often than not.
Yeah. No, I will. Thank you so much for taking the time to at least explain and sort of help me to understand where my thought process is going, at least. It's really helpful because now I can actually direct it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vicki. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, Vicki.
I wish you well, and go forth and learn the things, because this is stuff that's really cool. I'm not as up to date on this stuff, and I don't remember as much of this stuff as I used to, but I'm a skeptic and a geek and a magician, and I love trickery, and I used to be obsessed with pyramids and woo and all kinds of stuff when I was a kid, and are ghosts real, and witchcraft, and I had dowsing rods. I still have dowsing rods. I have them around here somewhere. Actually, they're in my magic bag, but is dowsing real? Is electronic voice phenomenon, all these things that are real, all this paranormal stuff that we don't know and couldn't explain. And that's what led me to the James Randi Educational Foundation. I have an entire library of books on pseudoscience, encyclopedias of pseudoscience, and a collection of books that are, here's all the weird stuff we can't explain, and I used to love watching those shows. I think if you start digging in and asking the right questions about how do I tell what's real from what's not, I think you're going to be fine. And what you may find is that if you're not willing to say, I'm convinced there's a God, until you both understand what God is, why you're convinced, and how you could defend that to somebody else, you'll be fine. And by the way, that goes for not just God, it goes for everything. Matt, somebody in chat said Matt has a magic bag like Mary Poppins. I have a number of magic bags. Basically, they are performance bags. This is my 20-minute show. This is my 45-minute show. This is the tech, stuff like that. But yes, we're getting ready to go on some more calls, but I want to remind everybody, welcome. You're on the Hang Up on the Line. There will be no super chats tonight, so we're just taking calls. We're interacting. We will still continually prioritize theists, but we are here raising money for recoveringfromreligion.org. If you did not know that, rewind to the beginning of the show, listen to my little monologue there, and then jump back to here. But the goal for tonight, and this is before the fundraiser actually starts. We're cheating a little bit. The fundraiser is supposed to start Saturday at 2. That's when we're going to have a bunch of guests from the broader sector. I can't even begin to tell you who all is going to be here Saturday, in part because I don't know. But some of the names that I heard made me go, really? Oh, that's cool. I can't wait. So we're looking forward to Saturday. We'll get a schedule up and everything else. On Friday night, we're doing an early kind of golden mic night thing here to raise some more. And tomorrow night on my channel, which I'm sure moderators can put a link to it in chat, but it's, me. We're going to do something tomorrow night too, and I'll find out more about that. I don't even know right now. But for tonight, the goal is to hit $4,500 in donations before the show is over. If we do that, there's someone who will match $500 of that, which will instantly turn our $4,500 into $5,000. Right now, we've been on for an hour and 15 minutes, and we have raised $2,180 for Recovering from Religion. I was going to say I couldn't be happier, but you know what? That's a lie. I could be a lot happier. Don't get me wrong. I'm really happy, and I'm proud of the people who contributed, but Matt's not as happy as he could be. I mean, you could turn this cranky curmudgeon who's going to call out into a yay, we raised all the money and stuff. It's really good. Somebody in chat just said, is the show already over? No, the show's not over, and we got calls, and we're starting right now. We have Dark Light Delirium, pronouns are he, him, calling in from, I guess, Arkansas. Their theist says, I'm a non-Abrahamic true monotheist. I want to explain what I think and why. So, hey, Dark Light Delirium, how are you?
What up, y'all? I'm pretty good. I am the brightest night. I am the darkest light, and I am ascending. That's just my basic intro. I drop that everywhere I go. But
I don't know what the hell that means.
That's cool. I do have some stuff for you here. If you want to hear it, answering the exact question that you were asking the girl earlier, but I don't think she quite answered.
You're talking about
so
what
can you go ahead and
what do you mean by? Are you saying that the questions? What do you mean by God, and why do you think it's real? Or those are questions you're ready to answer?
Yes. I have a totally different perception of what God is.
I understand that. I'm still trying to understand brightest light, darkest night, and ascending. I don't know what that means.
It's supposed to be a built-in contradiction. Bright night and dark light. Yes,
okay,
that's just my.
I understood the words.
That's my intro. I dropped it everywhere I go.
Is it like your theme song, only you just made it one dope line?
That's not my theme song. I do have a bunch of bomb ass poems, and I'm working on my metal vocals right now. But that's besides the point. I do. Okay, so I call it the fractal singularity omnimatrix, and I do have definitions for that. It is my perception of God, and it's not something outside of you. I see it as we are all an extension of the Godhood. And I define the Godhood as the singular state of God infinitely compounding to render every possibility and probability. But so fractals are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across all scales, from micro to macro, examples of which are roots, lightning, coastlines, snowflakes, mountains, Mandelbrot sets. As such, singularity is
the physical things you described are described as fractal in nature, but aren't truly fractal because they end, like a lightning doesn't persist. So fractals aren't something that actually exist. They're mathematical projections that.
That's a recurring structure that pops up everywhere.
Wow. Never mind. Go ahead.
You see what I'm saying? Because the fractals within the roots and the lightning and mycelium growing, roots growing, that's all the same structure, even though, of course, those temporary structures will fade, as all things do. But
yes,
what I'm getting at...
That's literally what I was just saying, that they are fractal in nature, but they are not fractals because they terminate. So okay, I'm wondering, what use is it to describe God as the same as an abstract mathematical concept that does not actually exist in reality?
Well, it actually does. It's a mathematical construct, but it is also found in nature everywhere. You know.
No,
But
no,
can
no,
I continue with
no,
my?
no. When I start talking, pause for a second. I'm just trying to ask something for clarity. No, you are not going to continue until we reach some sort of clarity or understanding on this. Fractals do not actually exist. Fractal-like and partial fractals exist in reality, right?
I don't agree that fractals don't actually exist.
Okay,
Fractals
show me a
are.
fractal. Show me an actual existing fractal.
I'm talking about the growth structure of the fractal. I'm
No,
not talking about
the fact that
these are examples of the growth structure of the fractal.
Stop talking. The fact that something is fractal in nature does not make it a fractal. A fractal, as far as I can tell, does not exist in reality. They are mathematical constructs, just like primes and numbers and things like that.
Although there is a mathematical fractal aspect, there is also in reality. I mean, we can agree to disagree on that. I mean,
No,
are we going to get hung up on that, or what? Are we going to get hung up on that?
Don't say agree to disagree, because that means that you suggest there's not an actual right answer. There is a right answer. You're wrong, and you are approaching.
What I'm saying is we don't agree.
You are pissing me the fuck off by talking over me, but you are approaching fractal wrongness, where you are wrong at every conceivable resolution. So, what is God, and how do you know he's real?
Okay, well, I was in the middle of my definition of what I think it is.
Okay, I'm going to mute you so that you don't talk over me this time. I don't need you to tell me what you were in the middle of. I don't need you to talk about fractal singular omnimatrix. I don't need you to tell me that you're the brightest light, the darkest night, and ascending. Because you are starting to sound like someone who needs to be, I don't know, talked with to get you to come back to reality. I'm going to ask some simple questions to hopefully direct this conversation in a productive way. Can we try that, please?
Yeah, shoot, bro.
Okay. Do you believe in a God?
I believe that we are all God. I believe in the construct of yes. I believe in God. Yes, I believe in God.
Is your God a thinking agent?
It is all thought. Everything is thought, from my perception.
Does believing in your God,
thinking agent,
does believing in your God matter? Does it change anything about my reality if I were to say, oh, I believe in that God, or if I say I don't believe in that God? What changes about my reality?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, I'm not trying to convert anyone or anything. I'm just trying to have a discussion about what I believe.
You know, I tell you what,
I'm not promising
delirium,
you
if you can't answer the question, I asked yes or no questions, and then I asked for specific clarification, and you seem to be incapable of doing that. So does it matter if I am convinced that your God is real?
No, don't matter. It don't matter at all. No, it don't matter what you're convinced of.
Goodbye. Thank you for calling. If you are going to call in to advocate,
God,
what's that?
oh, I was just going to say, if everything is God, then nothing is God. It makes it senseless.
If you're going to call in and advocate for some esoteric God that is absolutely useless, or the existence and the non-existence of this God is either undetectable or irrelevant, don't call. I could not give fewer fucks about your fractal omni matrix. Cool. Take another bong rip. Enjoy your life. I'm talking about people who are advocating for gods that fucking matter. Not that we're all gods, or that thought is God, or that truth is God, or the universe is God, or orgasms are God, or food is God, or fucking fractals are God. Do not give the slightest fuck about gods like that, because they're as useless as anything else that is useless. And having conversations with people who advocate for that is mind-numbingly stupid and boring and a waste of everybody's time. If your God doesn't matter, conversations about your God do not matter. So we have others.
I do have a friend or two that thinks orgasms are God. So on that count, you may not be correct, Matt.
I got no problem with someone worshiping an orgasm. I just don't think they're God. All right. Calling in from Indiana is Talon.
They do either.
Talon pronouns he, him. There's a theist who wants to talk about the reality of God and that he does exist. Hey, Talon, what God are we talking about?
So my definition of God, personally, is when energy becomes conscious and starts creating. And I'm not 100% sure of when that happens, but as I understand it, plasma heats and cools. And when that plasma heats and cools, it pretty much settles out into like electron geometry that starts as hydrogen.
Talon, did you just hear what I said to the last caller?
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Does the existence of this God, is it verifiable?
There are some people who
That's
have
a
like
no.
a definition.
That's a no. That's a no. Talon, does
well,
the
what
existence
I'm
does
okay,
Talon,
well,
Talon,
man,
does
go ahead,
Talon
go ahead,
stop talking and stop telling me to go ahead? Listen,
go ahead.
stop
I said
fucking
go ahead.
talking. Shut
Go
up.
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
don't. Okay, I'm gonna fucking mute you. I don't need you to tell me to go ahead. It's my fucking show. I'll go ahead whenever the fuck I want. I have a question. Does the existence of your God matter in any way to me?
May I answer the question?
Okay, Talon. Listen very carefully. You are muted right now. Nobody can hear you. In a second, I'm going to unmute you. I would like for you to answer the question. Because, as I noted to the last caller, esoteric, nonsensical gods that don't matter are a waste of time to discuss. So I'm going to ask a very simple question. Does it make any difference to my life if I believe in the God that you're advocating for? That's a yes or no question. What difference does it make in my life if I believe in the God? Okay, I'm going to mute you again because you don't know how to have a conversation. So now you've said that it does make a difference in my life, whether or not I believe in the God you're advocating for. So, what difference does it make if I'm convinced of your God? Go ahead.
It increases your awareness of objective knowledge.
How?
God is a longitudinal EMF wave. There's people who have some evidence on that. I don't know if you want me to go into that.
Nope. Say goodbye, Talon.
This dude is ass, bro.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You are ass. You are absolute ass. You didn't listen? Oh, and now you hung up. I told you to say goodbye, but you hung up. A longitudinal EMF wave, and there are people who have some evidence of that. Have those people call in and present their actual evidence. Actually, don't. Have those people present their evidence to a scientific journal to convert God, to demonstrate that a God exists. Because until then, you are on the same footing as the previous caller, advocating for some pseudoscience nonsense with a whole bunch of language that could have been vomited forth by saying, hey, ChatGPT, make up a fictional quantum description of some God that we cannot demonstrate and cannot falsify. I'm not having conversations with ChatGPT or bong rip gods. Okay. Here we go. Let's try again. Mr. Yes, Sir is calling from Georgia, pronouns are he, him. Hey, Mr. Yes, Sir, it says here you're a theist who was invited to call by a viewer. So how are you?
Yeah, man. How you doing? I'm good. I'm good. Boy, you're a little hostile. I see what you be saying. You know, hey, stay on topic and everything.
Okay. I'm going to mute you for a second. Listen to me. I'm not hostile. I'm doing a show where there are 4 or 5 people who are waiting on hold. I'm asking people to tell me if they believe in a God and why they believe in a God. And I specifically have said, I don't know, gazillion times over the 20 fucking years I've been doing this, don't call in to waste our time with pseudoscience, quasi-God things that don't matter to anybody and aren't testable or falsifiable. Everybody starts off on the same footing. I'm not hostile to callers until they demonstrate that they do not know what the fuck they're doing or are unwilling to have an honest conversation. So let's start over. I'm going to unmute you now. Hey, Mr. Yes, Sir. I'm hoping that you're here to have a good conversation about your God beliefs. Welcome to the show. You're on with myself and Dr. Darrel Ray. How are you today?
I'm good.
Cool.
I see what you're
are you
saying.
a God believer?
Well, let's try to have a peaceful conversation. I'm doing well. How you doing today, guys?
I'm all right. Are you advocating for some kind of God?
Advocating, yeah, man. I'm here to tell everybody that there's a higher power. I don't necessarily call it God, but yeah, there's something that created us and makes all this stuff go around. Yeah.
So there's a higher power that created us and makes stuff go around. How do you know that?
Well, personally, I'm a multi-tour combat veteran in the middle of war and people dying. Some entity spoke to me, and I can't explain it, but it told me the right thing to do, and I'm here. I'm living. Then it told me to read this book that I thought was BS my whole life, and then
what's the book?
Come to find out it's true.
What's the book?
Say again? Well,
What's
this thing
the book?
called Bible. So I was a preacher's kid. It was the Bible. I was a preacher's kid, and my preacher parent would go preach all that word and come home and cuss me out. And I said, "Oh, you hypocrite!" Until I realized ass means donkey. Until it means shit just means turds, and the word fuck is fornication under the certification of the king. So really, there's no curse words. Actually,
no, it's not. So, Mr. Yes, Sir. Listen up. I'm also a veteran. Certainly not going to compare combat credentials as I was in the Navy. But I've never heard a voice speak to me and tell me to read the Bible.
Man,
what was the circumstances? I'm sorry. What were the circumstances where you heard a voice? Was it an audible voice or did it feel like more like inside your head?
No, it was audible. It scared me.
Okay, so
were you alone?
Were you alone?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was alone in a.
How do you know it was? How do you know it was audible? How do you know it was audible if nobody else heard it?
Well, that's the same thing as saying, how do you know if a tree fell in the woods if no one was there? I heard it. My ears worked, and if you were the tree fell, you'd hear that.
No, Mr. Yes, Sir. No, it's not the same thing. Because if a tree fell in the forest and there was nobody around to hear it, why are you talking over me and interrupting? Why don't you let me finish my thought? If a tree falls over in a forest, does it make a sound? Would you shut up while I'm talking, or do I have to mute you every time I want to speak? What's up with people today?
Oh, see, you're ignorant. Of course it makes a sound. You're just stupid and didn't hear it.
Why are you calling me ignorant? And then here, I'm going to mute you. Oh, you just hung up. Why are you calling me ignorant and telling me the very fucking answer you hung up. You ran away, you little fucking coward. Did you do that during combat too? I was getting ready to say, if a tree falls in the forest, yes, it makes a sound, but nobody's around to hear it. And we can say it makes a sound because sound is just a physical wave. And there's no reason to think that physics stops working just because you're not around to see it. And so when I'm asking the question about whether or not this is an actual audible sound, I want to know how you tell that. Because it is possible to have audible hallucinations. It is possible to think a sound is audible when it's not. But also, I've never had that experience. So I wanted to find out more about it. And why, if it told you to read the Bible, why you advocate for that God as opposed to something else?
I imagine there's people on the other side when he was in combat that had their own book. I wonder if they had the same experience being told to read that book as opposed to the one he's reading.
But what's wild is I got called ignorant while I was trying to explain the physics and the actual fact of trees and sound by a guy who can't even bother to Google and use Snopes to determine that the word fuck does not actually originate from the phrase, from the acronym for unlawful carnal knowledge. That is not the origin of the word fuck. You are factually fucking wrong, and you are the one that is fucking ignorant. Thank you for wasting all of our fucking time for useless common knowledge that you're trying to spread that is false. All right.
Hey, if I could hop in for a second, I was going to say, I'm wondering if we could do a big push for donos that are like under like $5 or less, a bunch of grassroots donos. So if a bunch of people are out here right now and you've got at least $5, maybe you can forego a coffee or a lunch or something in the next week. And we could maybe even get a timer up on the screen. And when the clock hits, let's say 7:40, so in about 2 minutes, get as many $5 or less grassroots donos as we can. How's that sound?
Well, we can. I don't necessarily know how to do it, and I wasn't going to put you in the position of putting up a clock. But the idea that I'm running, so I want to give an incentive. So maybe if we put up a poll that says Matt should let people speak more or less, and then if they don't donate, I'll do the opposite. But to keep up with our producer, we are at $2,325. That's just a bit over halfway. Get ready. If you would just vote this way instead of by poll. If you think I should let the bong rip theologists talk more for any reason, because you laugh, because it's a clip, donate $5 right now. And if we get $200 in the next, let's say it's 7:39, in the next 3 minutes in $5 donations, then I will let the bong rip guys go on even longer. So we're at 24:24.
All right, so we've got 30 seconds. When the clock hits, this is going to be about 10 seconds behind. We already got a bunch flooding in, but yeah, when you see that clock hit 7:40 your time, hit dono, get it all set, get it prepped, right? You've had a couple minutes to get ready. Maybe send another one if you've got another one ready, if you're able to do that. And
I'm telling you, we have no theists in the queue. We have only atheists in the call queue, which is already a little bit irritating because there's 4 lines and there's atheists on all 4 of them. So what's going to happen is as soon as we hit this deadline here, are we going to get to the number?
We just hit it. We just hit it. There's a clock on the screen. Okay. Go, go, go. Donate as much as you can. Please, please, please go. As many $5 grassroots donos. These are the ones that are most accessible to people, and they help so much.
I should have practiced my auctioneer voice. I'm going to get you $5, $5 get you $5 in right now. I can't do it. And I definitely can't do it with my denture. And I bet just about spit my top teeth out trying to do an auctioneer roll. I don't know where we were going to on the time, but you guys are killing it. $2,513. Now we're getting there. That means we only need to hit $2,000 more before the end of this show. You guys have gone well beyond the halfway point, and it's 7:40. The problem is that we started at 6, which means in an hour and 40 minutes, we've gotten a little over halfway.
We're doing great. Let's keep those $5 donos rolling until, let's say, 7:45. So we got another 4 minutes. Got a bunch of Anon. We've got Anari Tenko. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what I'm going to do. This could be fun. My apologies in advance, but there's 4 atheists on hold. I'm going to let a caller call in. Keep going. Keep those $5 things going. We're up to $2,581. I see it building. There's 5 pounds as well. I'm going to let a caller call in when the timer stops. When Arden gets his timer. And this caller, if you guys are done hearing from this caller after 5 minutes of conversation, we'll start another $5 thing. And when it runs out, I have to hang up. Because otherwise I might talk to this next person for days.
I like that. Let's do it.
26:38. Is it time yet?
We've still got another 3
We
minutes
do.
till 45. I mean, unless you want to take it sooner. You are the host, you steer. I'm just trying to facilitate.
We got 3 minutes. We'll burn this 3 minutes while we're waiting to get a call. There's another $5 donation coming in. Wow, and that's a $10 and a $20. All we're looking is $5. Just everybody in there, $5. There's 1,500 people watching right now. Do you know that if 1,500 people all donated $5, if y'all donated $500, we'd just stop the show right now. But if 1,500 people donate $5 all at the same time, we finished the night goal well ahead, got it all done. Boom. Jimmy can be like, oh, I always do really good. And I can be saying, no, Jimmy, we just did it. We beat it already. Nobody should be stopping. There's 2 minutes left. What can I do? No, I should save that for Saturday. If you guys, we have 1 minute and 45 seconds left on my clock. If you guys get us to $3,000 by then, I will wear the Jesus hat for the entire rest of the show, apart from taking it off to, wipe my head or something. But if you get us to 3,000 before that clock hits 7:45, I will wear this Jesus hat, which means there will be clips out there that people can take, and then we can confuse people, and they can be, why the hell is this dude in a Jesus hat talking about how the Catholic Church is a criminal organization and he doesn't give a shit if there's a new pope or if the new pope's shittier than the old one or better than the old one. You guys
Nice.
got
That means
1
they've
minute
got-
and 5 seconds.
1 minute. We're about 200 and what is that? $47 away. So you guys can hit that in 1 minute. Come on, let's go. I've got so many $5 flowing in. Let's go. Keep it up. Good momentum, guys.
$2,787. You got 50 seconds left. 5050. How cool is that? I would definitely do it. We might have to swap it up for later.
Another
'cause I
50 from LA Silver Surfers. Thank you so much. We're doing great.
Wow.
You guys are awesome. I don't think you're going to get there.
Oh, I believe in them. Come on, let's go. We got 30
Come on,
seconds left.
You got 30 seconds.
Keep it cracking. $5
I could also
donos.
go with my fake MAGA hat at some point. I love
Just
that one, man.
$100 left to hit that goal to make Matt wear the hat. Come on, guys. You got 20 seconds left. Keep it going. Keep it going. Keep it going. I believe in you.
15 seconds to get 50 more dollars in, and I will be a Jesus hat wearer. There we go. It's $100. Boom.
Nice. Awesome. Way to go, guys. Thank you so much. You're incredible.
If we get much more, I'll start singing hymns. All right. Eric in Washington is calling in. Eric's an atheist who says he doesn't think secular humanism works in society when so many are incapable of rational decisions. So, as the guy in the Jesus hat, hey, Eric, am I understanding you correctly that why would you think secular humanism doesn't work just because some people might not reason well?
Well, it's the challenge of trying to figure out what is the best well-being for people, because so many people involved in so many different ways say believing in Jesus is your best well-being. Believing in Allah is your best well-being. And this is where I struggle. Kind of my last escape from religion is how do I figure out that my thought patterns are getting to the best well-being for other people? Because I know I've made mistakes in my life. I have lost friends to suicide after I've tried to counsel them. I'm no good at it. They were, I didn't see the signs. So my question is always about that. How do I get to what's the best well-being for people?
Well, secular humanism isn't a magic, hey, we fixed the world. Secular humanism is a set of principles that have a goal of getting better at getting better. The fact that people aren't always rational thinkers is no more a problem for secular humanism than it is for any other moral system. You know, if your moral system requires people to kind of, you know, follow the rules, and it's not a fault of the system to say, yeah, but there's people who don't want to follow the rules.
I agree with that.
So are you more worried about whether or not how effective secular human is likely to be? Because what do you think would be better?
I don't have a proposal for what would be better, but that's where I'm kind of lost. I thought religion would guide me. Well, it doesn't guide me all that well. I end up picking and choosing parts of religion to say I'm going to follow this part, but not that part, which is basically secular humanism saying I'm going to follow the parts I like. But when I talk to other people, what they like or what they don't like, and here's where I run into problems. I look at the state of the U.S. as, you know, a democracy doesn't come out with a good secular humanism-based government. I mean,
sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Democracy is, you know, imperfect, and yet still, what's the old adage that it's better than all the rest?
Winston Churchill said it was the worst form of government system, but better than all the rest. Yeah, that's what he said.
Well, I would agree with that. I struggle with trying to get to that consensus of what's the best well-being for people.
Okay. So if secular humanism has well-being as its goal, if you don't have any objection and you can't find fault with secular humanism, then all you're really doing is suggesting, hey, we don't have all the answers yet, which of course we know and secular humanism acknowledges because it's about trying to find those answers. And we also know that other systems are constantly giving the wrong answers and have the wrong goal. For example, just looking at Christianity, there's nothing within any version of Christianity that even suggests that a good life here on earth is in the ballpark of its goals. Instead, it's advocating for a good afterlife and a life of struggling in trials and tribulations here. And so already on that thing, Christianity is immediately disqualified as the best thing for this life. So if we can't come up with anything better than secular humanism, and we can't find any flaws within secular humanism, where's the objection? Because then you're just saying, hey, we haven't got it all figured out yet. But if secular humanism's goal is to figure it out, then we're sitting here, we're saying, hey, we need to measure this house. And I pull out the tape measure and I start taking tape measurements of the house. And you're saying, I don't think that's going to work because we don't have all the measurements yet.
Okay, that's fair. My question, maybe I asked the wrong question, and it sounded like I was criticizing secular humanism because it does read that way.
I get you.
But my difficulty is how do we get this into society where people start to be able to use it as the tool to run their life? Because I've run into a whole bunch of people that can't make a rational conclusion. And so it makes them kind of incapable, as I think I am at times, of following this. I mean, not knowing what to do or where to go. And so I guess I'm asking the question, what's the next step? It's a great concept. I love it. But what's the next step for us as humans to implement?
Do you think that teaching people how to get better at critical thinking is consistent with secular humanism?
I believe it is 100%.
There's your answer.
Yeah.
If you're just saying, how do we convince people of this? Then you keep promoting it, you keep arguing on behalf of it, and you keep helping them get better at thinking critically, at making rational decisions. Look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't think God belief is going to stop in my lifetime. I think actually things are about to get significantly worse over the next few years. and
Agreed.
and dramatically so. And so, while I'm a secular humanist and I'm advocating for it, at this point, advocating for secular humanism takes a back seat to me just a little bit. Explicitly advocating for secular humanism takes a back seat to doing things that are consistent with secular humanism that are more needed, which is standing up in opposition to fascism, standing up in opposition to the denial and rejection of the rule of law and due process and science, because we have the dumbest president in the history of the world who has appointed the least qualified cabinet and positions. You have a vaccine denying buffoon who does not understand science in charge of health and human services. You have an alcoholic TV show host running the Department of Defense and sharing sensitive information on platforms like Signal that aren't covered. There you have attack after attack after attack on the LGBTQ plus IA community. And they're coming after people. They're banning books. They're doing right speak searches on stuff to make sure that messages are consistent with Dear Leader. They are going after law firms. They're going after judges. They're going after universities to deny their funding because they include anything that is DEI, when none of them really even know what DEI is and can't explain what's wrong with diversity, what's wrong with equity, what's wrong with inclusion. They want to frame it as if, this is so that unqualified people can come in and take my job. No, you backwards ass dumb motherfucker. There's nobody less qualified than you. You aren't qualified to do the job that, not you, but the person saying that, you're not qualified to do the job that you were afraid that you lost to somebody who's not qualified. People who are qualified still get the jobs. What they're saying is you don't get to show priority to your buddy with a podcast, to your niece or nephew, to somebody because they're white. You have to look at all of the candidates and then make a fair decision. But anyway, all of that is taking a priority right now to the simple promotion of secular humanism for me. But I find that the things I'm finding are 100% consistent with secular humanism and help promote it that way. Does that kind of make sense?
I agree with your political statements, and that's what's got me just wondering how do we solve this with and well, I'd hate to use the adage, but you're preaching to the choir talking about our government right now.
Yeah, but I'm also preaching to people who aren't the choir.
Yes, I understand. And that's my concern is that I'm looking for this guidance, and I guess I will continue to follow it because I think it's the right thing to go.
Eric, let me throw 2 cents in on this. I'm 74 years old. I've lived through some shit. And I am concerned about where we are, as is Matt, and it sounds like as you are. I'm very concerned. I can't say how concerned I am, and here's the big but. Societies go through cycles. Cultures go through cycles. And whether we come out of this cycle more or less good is up to us. And now is the time for us to be making the difference that we want to be making. I lived through the Vietnam War era where 50,000 U.S. soldiers and millions of Vietnamese died. That was pretty damn traumatic. More traumatic than almost anything that's happened since. We've not had 50,000 U.S. soldiers die or hundreds of thousands come back wounded. So and we had a president who maybe not as bad as our current one, was pretty bad, in Nixon, who was willing to do almost anything to stay in power. So I saw some shit, and I saw what we had to do to get out of it. And we're back where we started in some ways. We're going to have to put our shoulders to the grindstone, or I guess a bad mixing of metaphors there, but Now is
I'm
now
almost
is the time
60,
to get out
so
and knock on doors and work to elect the people you want to elect and take care of the people who need taken care of in this current environment. We can complain about secular humanism. That's not really the issue. We're secular humanists. We're going to put our values to practice, and when we do that, hopefully we'll have a difference in where this culture goes.
and I view that as
Does that
well.
make
If yeah, it does. And I'm almost 60, so I've been through some of that as more of a kid when it was with the Vietnam issues. But
One thing
I don't see a positive future for me surviving in this country.
I don't either, and I'm a couple of years younger than you, maybe. But one thing is, you're like, oh, you're preaching to the choir. Well, as a former Southern Baptist, I'll tell you that preaching to the choir is how you get them to sing, and that is fundamentally what we're doing here. I don't just come on here to relay the news and say, ooh, secular humanism is good. So a whole bunch of people clap and say, yes, secular humanism is good. And, Trump bad, Democrats bad, Republicans bad, Green Party bad, all of it bad. That's not the purpose. It is, so for the people who already agree, we need them to not give up. And we know that they're more likely to give up if they feel alone, if they feel overwhelmed. And we know that what this administration is doing is an intentional, overwhelming series of actions. We're going to do 500 things so that you can't possibly focus on all of them. And if only 100 of them get through, we still accomplished 100 things. And so we'll rename the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf America. We'll declare that English is the national language. We'll ban paper straws, we'll do all the ridiculous stuff, and then we'll slide in, oh yeah, and there's two sexes, and if you have a driver's license that doesn't match your original birth certificate, not only is that going to be voided, but this other thing can be voided, and oh, nobody's allowed to participate in sports unless it matches the gender on their birth certificate, and no birth certificate, all these things. They've turned trans people that represent less than 1% of the population into the most terrifying boogeyman ever. Ooh, and it's all fear-mongering. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. What happened to that? Oh, it was never fucking true, and now you don't hear about it. Oh, the price of eggs is ridiculous. I'm going to bring it down day one. No, you fucking didn't, and you made things worse. It's Biden's economy when it's on the bad side, and it's Trump's economy when it's on the good side to him. He thinks that Camara Abrego Garcia, in addition to the art on his knuckles, also had the letters MS13 on his knuckles, which is an absolutely stupid thing to believe because it's just there on an image that was photoshopped in order to potentially explain what those other tattoos may or may not mean. It is this denial of facts, reality, and it's overwhelming, and it makes me want to quit, and it makes me want to cry. And what I do to stop from quitting and crying is I come on here to everybody else who feels like quitting and crying and say, I'm with you. I also want to quit. I also want to cry. I also don't know what's going on. But hang in there. I'm with you. You're with me. Let's see if we can move this forward. We don't have an answer to what's next. We don't have a way to implement secular humanism. I don't even have a way to implement the legal due process that the Constitution guarantees right now. That's where we live. And so you've got to triage and prioritize the worst things and do what you can to encourage the choir and get them to sing. Because the more people there are joining in that choir, the harder it will ever be to drown us out.
Yeah, I agree. I would only argue with one point. I'm not sure Trump is dumb. I think he's an evil genius with bad motives.
I think you're dumb.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, and I only mean on that subject. Did you watch the interview as he stood there, as he went after that reporter and tried to argue that the Photoshop thing wasn't Photoshop?
Yes, I did. And he does do a lot of dumb things, but I think it's a distraction. I think it's
What do you think was going on in his head? Do you think he was sitting there saying, okay, I know this is Photoshop, but I need to deny it for some other purpose?
Yeah. I don't want to argue with that point. It's kind of a moot point. I I think
It's
he's
not
an evil
moot.
man.
It's not moot. You think he's an evil genius. I haven't said he's not evil. He's not a genius. He's dumber than a sack of hammers. This is the guy that looks at the fucking sun during eclipse. This is the guy that talks about, hey, can you drink bleach? Can you inject bleach? Can you do that? Literally does not know anything about science, doesn't know anything about finances, which is why he's attacking the economy. Where is the demonstration of genius that convinces you he's an evil genius? Name one thing he's done that's fucking genius.
Well, I guess his motivation, and let me get through this a little bit, with the whole Project 2025, and he has managed somehow to get people rallied around him to implement most of that.
No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. No, this is why I'm saying, give me one thing he's done that's genius. What it is he's so stupid that the Project 2025 people are using him. Project 2025 isn't his baby. When he said he didn't know anything about it, he was at least partially telling the truth. He doesn't know anything about anything. They're using him. Marco Rubio doesn't fucking like Trump, doesn't want to do what Trump necessarily needs to do. They hate each other, but he got to that job and he's using Trump to try to implement some of the policies he wants. Every single person who's working with Trump has the most of them anyway, apart from the ones that are part of the absolute cult that think he's a genius, are manipulating him because he's the dumbest motherfucker that's ever been in that position. And as long as they suck his dick, stroke his balls, and do everything he wants to do, they're going to get rich and they're going to be safe from the consequences. Name one thing he's done that's genius.
I can't. I have to stand corrected.
I can't either. All right. We're going to move on, Eric, but I appreciate the call, and hopefully we can all keep singing.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks for calling, Eric.
Yeah, I genuinely don't understand when people are like, oh, no, he's an evil genius. No, what's he ever done that seems smart? Bankrupted a casino? You know how fucking hard it is to bankrupt a casino? I ran a casino on the forecastle of the USS Theodore Roosevelt during the Gulf War. I got in trouble for it, but it was never going to go bankrupt because I understand math. The casino, the house has an edge. I went to,
So you're a
for those who
troublemaker
don't know
back
the
then,
story,
were you, Matt?
for those who don't know the story, this is back when I was a Christian during the Gulf War. CVN 71, USS Theodore Roosevelt. I was the LPO or co-LPO of First Division. And up there on the forecastle, we would run a casino where people could come up and play blackjack, craps, roulette for money. There was nothing else to do during the Gulf War. You were getting tax-free pay and you were not getting any liberty, not able to get off the ship. So you had more money than you knew what to do. And I was like, okay, you guys want to gamble? Let's gamble. And I ran a little fucking casino up there. And nobody would have ever gotten any trouble except that one guy lost money and stole money from somebody else in order to pay me. And then 13 of us got charged and sent up to captain's mast, non-judicial punishment, together. And the person who stole the money got the book thrown at him. Big chicken dinner, bad conduct discharge. Basically the worst. But for all the rest of us who were involved, we all got $100 fine. And I told the captain I'd have given him $500 to not have it on my record because I made way more than that. Thousands of dollars because I was better at math. And I'm not even that good at math, but I was better at math than the people who were coming up to do it. All right. Here we go. I have a couple of callers. Oh, okay. Let's do that. So on the phone now, we've got Rob, who is a volunteer with Recovering from Religion. Rob, how are you?
I'm just fine. How are you, Matt and Dr. Ray? And Arden in the background. Hello.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, Rob.
Yeah, I was really interested in listening to these calls, and I figured I'd call in not only to support Recovering from Religion, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what Vicki talked about, if that's okay, Matt and Dr. A.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually write for CSI and their magazine, The Skeptical Inquirer, and they have an offshoot organization called CFIIG, which currently has about half of what Randy's paranormal challenge was. So that's in effect. His got retired, but there's $500,000 for anyone could prove any paranormal ability. So I would tell Vicki to go look at cfiig.org, that page. It shows all of the people who have attempted to win this and have not done so. It even has the page that one can use to apply for the $500,000. And why do you think no one has ever won that? Because no one can do this shit, Vicki.
Well, yeah. Instead of leading me down a road where I'm likely to say something that's not particularly nice about someone I don't like, instead, let's say nice things about something I do like and something that you like. How long have you been volunteering for Recovering from Religion, Rob?
Yes, when the pandemic started, that was my impetus. I actually retired from my job, and I had time to kill, and I had been a fan of the Atheist Experience and sister shows, and I heard you and all the co-hosts, and I said, I'd love to do that someday because my religious family doesn't want to listen to me, and if people are calling in, maybe I can help them. And then I heard about Recovering from Religion. I think it might have been on one of those shows, and I started deciding to do it, and then I became a volunteer. So yeah, it's been what is it, 5 years now, and 4 years plus, and it's been amazing. I would encourage anyone who's watching this now or in the future to consider, if you have the time and inclination, consider helping us out. I have trained people in the past, and some of them enter saying, hey, I'm going to do like Matt does, and when I pick up the calls. But they quickly have to learn, no, that's not what we do here, as I heard you guys talking about earlier, and Dr. Ray made clear. Mm-hmm. We support people where they're at and don't try to tell them they're wrong. Although I got to tell you, sometimes when people are recovering from religion, they are also getting into woo, and I have to really hold my tongue on those.
Yeah, a lot of us have had to bite our tongues over the years for that, but that's part of our mission.
Yeah, they go like, I know the Bible's not right, but my homeopathy is helping me, and my psychic is really helping me figure out things.
Well, I have a few questions, but before I do that, or while I'm getting ready to do that, I notice we're at $3,478, and that means we are $22 away from being within, or $23 away from being within $1,000 of our goal. Could somebody in chat just really quick donate $23 right now, just so I can start saying, hey, we're less than $1,000 from the goal. So Rob, when you volunteer, are you taking calls and interacting with people?
Yes, absolutely. Probably, I think in the time it's probably been about 900 calls. I stopped counting at 666. That was like 2 years ago. But yeah,
so I'm wondering
a record and
think of that. 900 people Rob's helped, and I know Rob helps them because I've seen how Rob operates. 900 people. That's only one person who's done 900. Thank you, Rob. That's awesome.
Yeah, we have a great team of volunteers. And again, if you have the slightest inclination to want to do this, give it a shot. So as you hear a lot on the line and other places, they recommend our helpline, and that's very important. But that's the in to first find out about us. We have so many other services we provide. Just myself. I got the training that Dr. Ray talked about in the beginning and became a helpline agent. And then I learned to interview people. So I was interviewing prospective agents for a while. We need people to do that. I was an online community moderator. We have an online community where people can talk to each other and agents about their problems after they call and we invite them. I train people to be agents on the helpline. I'm also a spokesperson. We call them ambassadors. I'm actually one of the co-hosts of the RFRX weekly live streamed show. We need people to do all of those things, and including things in the background. As has been mentioned before, and also in the chat, I saw people were pointing out, we have resources. We have a great resources page where when callers, tell us what's on their mind, we can point them to this page and they can do keyword search if they called about loss of community or the fear of hell, or they're in a cult, or what's Pascal's wager, or, what's the meaning of life? If you've lost your religious views, what do you do about that? We need people to look those things up, to add them to our database and that kind of thing. We even need IT people because we do all of that on our own. It's an amazing group of people that I work with.
I want to ask one quick question, Rob, and we've got another volunteer and possibly even another one calling in real quick. In your experience, just because I've never done it and I've never even called in, out of all the calls that you've taken, how many of them get hostile?
Very, very few. It's the exact opposite ratio of what call-in shows on get. Mostly it's people who are feeling lost. They've lost their community. They're having trouble with their family because they've come out, or they logically have reasoned their way out of religion, but they still have this overwhelming fear they're wrong and hell is real. As I mentioned, I think before, like now they don't know what to do with their life. My meaning of life came from my deity. What do I do now? And surprisingly, perhaps, this was surprising to me, the number of people who call who are LGBTQ in some way is much larger percent than I would say in the standard population. My theory there is, of all the reasons to leave a religion, especially the Abrahamic religions, right? If you're not, quote unquote, straight, it's a huge another reason to step out of the religion. And so we get a lot of those people calling us, and a lot of our clientele are LGBTQ plus.
I was going to put you on the spot, Rob. There was a caller that I was going to kind of loop in with you. To get a feel. I mean, obviously it's not the same as the call-in line, but I was going to get a feel for, how you would respond to an atheist asking this question. Unfortunately, we lost that caller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you the question. I'm going to have you give kind of a relatively short, concise overview of what would be going through your mind when you were talking to a person to try to answer this. And then we're going to move on to a couple other calls real quick. So the person was saying, how can an atheist get over their fear of hell?
Yeah, so that's something that I would first talk to them to understand exactly what are they afraid of. Sometimes it's just death and not really necessarily hell, but often it is the fear of either not being raptured, being dissolved if you're a Jehovah's Witness in the end times if you don't believe. Or burning forever, which is the worst case scenario. And so I would listen to exactly what that is. And then if I'm at my computer, especially, I would go to our resources and find the help for them and point them to it. Or if I'm not at my computer, sometimes I'm taking a call and I can't do that. I will tell them how to get to our resources directly. And there's a search bar and you put fear of hell and you'll get 40, 50 hits, some of which are online articles, some of which are YouTube channels, YouTube episodes. They might even be books on the subject. So that's where I would go. And if they want to talk some more, I would talk to them about the things I've heard you and others talk on these kinds of shows about. Well, why don't you fear the Muslim hell? Or, that sort of a thing, and get them to understand why they believe what they believe about the specific version that they're worried about, and they're not worried about anything else.
Cool. Rob, your cat needs your attention and I have another call. So I'm going to let you go minister to your cat. Okay. I greatly appreciate you calling in, and thanks for your volunteerism with
Take care of yourself.
You bet.
Thank you, Rob.
We're gonna get on to a couple other actual calls calling in really soon, but there's one other volunteer that I wanted to call in, and she did, and it's somebody who I absolutely adore. Glenda, hello, welcome to the show. You're on with me and Darrel.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Darrel. Yes, I'm only here because you asked me to call. I was comfortable just sitting in my hotel room being quiet and laughing. But yes, I'm here. And I did get to hear Rob's cat makes, if y'all have not attended RFRX, Rob's noisy cats love to make appearances on RFRX. We love them very much. You should come check us out on Monday nights to hear Rob's cats.
Well, we're not going to keep you too long. I'm getting ready to do another push here because we are now under $900 from tonight's goal, which I'm ecstatic about. Can't wait. But you mentioned something that was very important in chat, which is that in much the same way I've talked about, there are atheist organizations and people want to get involved. You don't necessarily have to be the on-air personality. We need somebody to do everything. We need somebody to set up chairs and answer questions and do stuff. It's not necessarily everything has to be front-facing. And so you were talking about volunteer opportunities with RFR that are not the hotline. And I wanted to give you a chance to kind of touch on that real quick.
Oh my goodness, yes. So I genuinely was laughing out loud about it when you were mentioning it earlier in the show, that you would not be a good fit for a helpline agent. And I agree with you to the core of my being. I would be an absolutely dog shit helpline agent, because when people want to call me and like, my husband says I'm sinful because I'm not beating my children for not praying, I would just respond, wow, your husband sounds like a fucking piece of shit and you should leave him. And that is not what our helpline agents are trained to do. So my talents lie elsewhere, and that's why I work as a moderator for our online support group meetings to help people who are being assholes gracefully exit. So we do that. We are in constant need. If you have any skills when it comes to tech support or graphic design, anything involving technology, we need your help. We need your support. If you have those specific skills, please head over to recoveringfromreligion.org/volunteer and fill out an application. It'll route you through the helpline agent, but you can let our trained agents who are standing by know, like, hey, I'm not interested in being a helpline agent, but I have these other skills that I think would be very helpful. Let them know, and we would love to interview you and hear you. Because again, we want to meet you where you're at with your skills, and I have that, and I'm also the baked potato charcuterie queen at the excursion. That's my job.
Yes. See,
Glenda is
and
hugely
also
involved in planning the excursion. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
And just generally one of my favorite people to hang out with that we don't get to hang out often enough. And especially since like the last 5 years almost with COVID and a downturn on stuff. And I'm probably not going to be at NanoCon, but we're talking about options for NanoCon. And right now my better half might be.
Well,
maybe.
I hate to
that'd be
choose,
cool.
but if mommy and daddy get divorced, I'm going to choose Arden. Sorry.
It's not going to happen. And
I'll choose you too,
would pick
Glenda.
her too. Anybody who would pick me over her needs a good lesson in rational thinking and empathy. But
yeah, Arden and I had a great time watching the drag show at American Atheists, and we were laughing about how straight the situation was with everybody sitting in chairs next to each other, and we like moved to sit to the side so the queens could get money from us easier. Anyway, it was a wonderful moment.
I wish I'd have been there. She told me all about it, and I'm glad you guys had fun. But for the purposes of today, you're going to be hanging out with us more this weekend over the course of this fundraiser. Huge thank you to you for all that you do for the movement as a whole, but especially for IFR. And when you mentioned that there were volunteer opportunities out there besides just being on the phones, I was like, call in, because it's important for people to know that if you're not comfortable talking to people on the phone, there's still 20 other things you could potentially do. And if you're not the kind of person who is comfortable having discussions or offering counseling or anything else, there's something for everybody to do. Now, it may not be particularly taxing. It may only happen on occasion. You know, I would like to have here's my dream. I think that the line needs to put together a convention that might be a joint convention with the line and Recovering from Religion as a fundraiser combo convention thing, where we get the people who do this regularly to have an amazing weekend with fun first, and then, you know, some speakers and serious stuff, and then some more fun, and then some important volunteer stuff and trying to help people. And then the last fun is the first 3 letters of fundraiser, which is what we're doing right now. And we're sitting at $3,940, which means we are $560 from getting somebody to match this and put us over and set us right at $5,000. Now, we need Glenda. I'm gonna drop you like a hot rock. Love you like.
That's fine. Love you.
See you all later.
Bye-bye.
We have a couple of calls waiting, but I just looked over and saw we're like $60. from being within $500 of getting the matching thing to get us to $5,000. That means $560. Darrel, I don't know, what can we do to incentivize people?
Well, I'm sorry, but I will not be getting a tattoo.
Well, no, yes, not for $560. I mean, if somebody dropped 50 grand here,
do another big push for $5 donos.
Yeah, what it is so I want to at least get $60 in the next minute. $60 in the $61 in the next minute. I already donated 20 on the last one myself. If you guys get, let's see, we need $560. Arden, start a clock for 10 minutes. It's 8:22 right now. If you guys get to $4,300 by 8:30, I'll donate another 100 myself, and then we'll be $100 away from getting $4,500. $4,300.
Wow.
Which means you need to get $360 in the next 8 minutes. 8 minutes is a long goddamn time. You know how long? 8 minutes is longer than I spoke at the introduction of today's show. 8 minutes. You should be able to get to $4,300. I will then donate $100 of my own money, and we will be within $100 at that point of getting a matching $500 to send Recovering from Religion out of here with $5 grand tonight. I mean, this is easy. I'm so confident that you guys are going to do it. 8 minutes is a long fucking time. Do you know when I sit down to record my videos for the month, I target 8 minutes, but it takes me, 15 or 20. I'm going to go ahead and start clicking on the 100. I've got it set up right here. Boom. There's that. I'm ready to click continue.
That goal Matt just set now.
Darrel, you need to ask these people for $200.
Well, I'm happy to ask for 200, 300, 500. Thank you. This is amazing. I mean, when I started this show tonight with you, Matt, I was hoping we might get $1,000 or something, but you guys have blown my mind. Wow, this is incredible.
We dream big here.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I only show up and talk, and then Jimmy and Arden give me ideas and push me in different directions. And so we are now 5 minutes and 40 seconds for you guys to get to 4,300. I'll take it to 4,400. And then I guarantee you somebody's going to cap it off. Because you can't sit at 4,400 knowing that $100 more is going to get you an extra $5. You just can't.
I think we gave them too much time. I think if a bunch of people out there have, let's do another big push for those $5 grassroots donations to get us over the mark that Matt set. So we've got what's like a little over 120 or a little less than $120 to get us there. I say in the next 2 minutes, I think you guys can get us there. So let's take 30 seconds. You guys can prep your donos, get them all ready, get your credit card info in, and then we'll do a big push. So $5 donos.
You're $101 away from me adding another $100 on there. This is easy.
Well,
whoa!
Look at that, 200. Whoa, cool. 200.
That means Matt's dono.
Close.
There's my 100.
100
and that takes us to what?
We did.
We did it. 4,534. Let's go, everybody. Way to go.
We met our matching goal. We are now at $4,500, which means somebody's going to match that to get us up to $5,000 for tonight.
Absolutely.
But hey, you don't have to stop there. You can keep donating, but we have a couple calls on the line, 2 calls right now, and possibly a third one that might be a theist to end the show with. We're going to take these calls. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Jamnik, thanks for teeing it up for me, and to everybody else who donated, but don't fucking stop. That's only $4,669. If you imagine, what if you got to 5? What if you got to 6? There's still that $500 coming in as well. You guys are amazing. And this is just the pre-stuff. I'm going to be doing something tomorrow night on my channel. We haven't decided exactly what yet, but we'll figure it out. And then Friday night, there's going to be the Golden Mic night. And then Saturday, the The fundraiser starts at 2:00, and there's going to be big names, big fun, and some challenges that probably won't wind up with me being tattooed, but may make some other changes as well. You guys are hot buttered awesome. Let's take a call. Stephen in Texas is an atheist, pronouns are him, says, I need help protecting myself from being evangelized to in a professional setting. Wow, Stephen, what's going on?
So basically, there's a person in my workplace who runs a Christian organization. I work in like a shared office, and sometimes that shared office will have events. And he doesn't advertise that he's Christian, but he's made it very clear through these events that I've gone to that like he's sort of preaching some Christian morality, which I just go to that event, which I'm fine with. But then he'll like try to take me to lunch or whatever, and I'll entertain him because he offers to pay, which they all do. And he asked me about my faith previously, which I'm an atheist now, but back when I was a child, I was raised in Hinduism, and I would entertain his questions and talk about what my parents taught me to believe. But then after that, he would read like Bible verses to me and try to ask me about my views on morality and stuff. And I've made it pretty clear that like I'm an atheist. But then he's just like, no, I'm just trying to like reciprocate what you've done for me. You told me about what you used to practice. Now I want to tell you. And I'm like, bro, I never went into like verses out of my books. So I'm getting the sense that this guy may not stop, especially because as a Hindu. As a former Hindu, but as somebody of Indian origin, I'm a person of color. So I don't want to also seem like an easy target for him. But anyways, that's a long way of saying, how do I deal with people like this, especially in a place where I can't, in a like an office space where I can't really, be as blunt as dude, go away.
Is it like a private
Stephen,
business?
is there a
Right.
Stephen, is there a consequence, a potential consequence around you if is the environment unsafe? Is what I'm asking.
Not in like a physical sense, but in like everyone else around me is Christian, even though they don't evangelize. They do, I guess, share his beliefs. So I don't want to like rebuke him and then deal with also, I guess, the social backlash of these people that are around me would say, would be agitated that I, made my point of view so blatantly clear.
What do you think is inviting him to behave like this? What are you doing that might be inviting him to behave like this? And this, I'm not indicting you or saying you're doing anything wrong, but what are you doing? That's what I'm interested in.
Well, I mean, I would say I'm a fairly sociable person. I'm friendly and I enjoy having conversations with people. And so when originally I was offered on these lunches, I didn't think that the discussion of the lunches would just go in that direction. I just thought, we'd be getting lunch as friends sort of thing. And I, quickly, came to realize that like that might have been my intention, but his intention was to evangelize to me.
Exactly.
I'm wondering.
Let me throw something out. About boundaries?
Like setting boundaries.
You have a right, and you can set a boundary real clearly with somebody like this without being obnoxious. You can simply say, let's establish the rules for our lunches. And then the two of you can have a reasonable and rational discussion about the rules, not about the book or the religion. And hold him to those rules. Once you say, and I don't know what your rules would be. I would guess I could throw some out, but for starters, how's that sound?
I mean, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, and it's something that I should have considered.
Is there an HR department where you work?
Sorry?
Is there an HR department where you work?
where I work, it's like a shared office. So my company works in a space with other companies. So he is in my same working space, but he's not part of my company. But yeah, I guess my company has its own HR.
Okay. I agree with what Darrel's saying, and I'm happy to let Darrel continue. The only thought that I had on there was that you could be like, whenever that person starts proselytizing, because they're not in your chain of command or anything, there's no risk of you losing your job. You could say, hey, I'd love to continue going to lunch with you, but for me, religion is an incredibly personal thing that I'd rather not have discussions about. Is it possible for us to have lunches and interact without discussing those? Because I don't want to have those discussions. And that's where Darrel was going with boundaries, is if they can't respect those boundaries, I would stop going to lunch with them for sure. But
yeah, I see what you're saying. And I think, like, now that I think about it, what you're saying is obviously the logical thing for me to do.
And in setting the boundaries, if you want to continue having intelligent conversations, that's a good thing. But in order to have an intelligent conversation, you have to have clear rules about, I get to speak X in my way on these things, and you respond, but you can't respond with your Bible verses or whatever, and then he can do the same thing. What I found about, especially about Christians or Christianese, it could be Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever, they will not read your book, but they will certainly insist on you reading their book. So I found one way to turn people off is, and it works pretty well, and that is, I've read all your book. I know the Bible inside and out. Now here's the book I would like you to read, and we can discuss that. I will guarantee you they won't read it, or they'll read it in a very cursory fashion and find all the reasons why it's wrong, but they won't intellectually engage with that book. That's one way to get people to back off, because they won't do that at all.
Yeah, actually, that sounds like a really smart idea. I just purchased Sam Harris's The Moral Landscape, so maybe when I'm done with that,
there you go.
Pass it along to him. Yeah.
Yeah, but insist on, we're not going to talk anymore at all about religion unless you read the book that I recommend. You sound like a nice person, and I'm going to make a guess here. You're probably also conflict avoidant. Is that true?
That is certainly, yeah, that's very true.
Okay, I could tell. So, and lots of people are conflict avoidant. Don't get me wrong; it's a pretty normal, natural thing. But when you're conflict avoidant, you also have trouble setting boundaries with people who will abuse your goodwill. And I think one of the skills I would encourage you to learn here, not just with this guy, but with any number of people who may have stepped over the boundaries in your life, learn how to say no. Learn how to say, here's what I will do and what I'm not going to do. And, be more assertive about that. And there's your free therapy session for the evening.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Stephen. I got one more call I want to get to, but yeah, set some boundaries, have the conversations. And, now that my first thought was, is this person like in your chain of command? Would you be at risk of losing your job? But if that's not the case, then basically you're just saying, you might as well look at that as, this is a guy I walk past in the elevator in my building every day, and he wants to talk to me about Jesus. And so you should be able to have the same thing as anybody else is, hey, I might be willing to have these conversations with you some other time, but we need to set some boundaries, or I don't really care to have these conversations. If you want to talk about something else, cool. You want to talk about, some TV show, the latest Marvel movie, a video game, I'd rather stay away from religion or politics or whatever it is that you don't want to have the conversation with. Yeah, you set your own boundaries.
Great, thank you. This has been very insightful. And Matt, I'm sorry, and Ray, Dr. Ray, I thank you so much for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Sure, thanks so much. Best of luck, Stephen.
Thanks for calling.
We have one more call. Now, technically, we have hit the $5,000 mark for tonight because we're at $4,773, and there's a $500 matching because we got to the 4,500 goal. So when that hits, we will then cross over $5,000. we are going to take one more call right now. Although I see, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Arden's got, because there's somebody in the screening room. Okay, I see that closing lines. There may be one more after this, but we're definitely taking this call. During this call, every time you hear something that you would like to applaud, throw in another $5. Wait, somebody just said, I will donate $50 if Matt calls Forrest and he answers. Okay. Here we go. Hi, hey, it's me. We're live right now on the Hang Up, and somebody said they would donate $50 if I called you and you answered. So you just made us $50.
Pay again.
For recovering from
Donate
religion.
twice, you bastard.
There you go. I'm going to let you go because while they did donate $50, they don't deserve any more of your time until this weekend when we're raising more money. But we've already crossed over $5,000 tonight. So y'all got work to do.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Hello, everybody. See you later.
Thanks, Forrest.
There you go. Pay up. God damn it. Don't try to test me. There was a guy in Canada who's really mad, by the way, that I called Canadian money alleged money. Now, that's a long-standing sarcastic joke here. I love Canada. I toured Canada. We had some of our co-hosts are Canadian. I would most of the time I'd rather be in Canada. And you know, we're in a way kind of mocking the change to Canadian money and how it was kind of weird and colorful and stuff, but our money's kind of weird and everything else too. So it's just a fun little joke. And this person was not having it. And I am just absolutely the worst person ever for mocking Canadians. And somebody else who is a loon, who I didn't realize who I was talking to, and if I had, I would have just never responded, suggested that for the same reason I don't think it's fun to joke about trans people, maybe you should understand that the same thing applies to Canadians. How dare you suggest that me joking about Canadian money is even in the fucking ballpark of people mocking trans people? But enough of that. We have actual callers. If you hear anything during this call that you like, $5 is your applause. I'd almost have him shut down the chat, except that the chat's still fun. So Tim's calling from the UK. Pronouns are he, him. Tim's a theist who says he used to be a vehemently atheist and is now a Muslim and believes Shahada is the best possible axiom. Hey, Tim, how are you?
Hello, Matt. Bit tired because it's late over here, but I'm okay.
How can the best possible axiom be something that I'm not aware has even been demonstrated to be true? I mean, does it matter if it's true? Like, if there isn't a God, is it still a good axiom to bear witness that there's no God but Allah, and I bear witness to the Muhammad is the messenger of Allah?
It's an interesting hypothetical. If you were, I guess, some kind of pragmatist, you could make that argument, but that's not my argument.
Okay. So you're convinced that there is a God and that Muhammad is the messenger of God?
Correct.
Why would God pick a messenger who has sex with a 9-year-old?
I'm not sure that's a reasonable question to ask.
Oh, I'm
not sure why we're going straight to
is God morally good?
Yes, but I mean, God. First of all,
Why
we've got
would
to check.
God?
Are we talking about the same concept of God?
I'm sorry. Hang on. I'm trying to figure out. You're saying that there's a God and he's good, and he picked a child rapist as his messenger.
Well, that's not correct. She was an adult.
It's not?
Yeah, she was an adult.
No, she was 9 when they consummated it.
According to what evidence?
Well, there's tons of Muslim scholars that are advocating for it. So how old was she when she married Muhammad?
Muslim scholars advocate for there being God, and you don't believe them. So I mean, I don't know why we need to go down this line of reasoning. It's not
because it's important.
At the end of the day.
So here we go, Tim. How old was Aisha when she married Muhammad?
we have various different positions. The most common is that she was 9. However, in all positions, she was post-puberty.
No, I said when she married Muhammad, even Aisha's own writings talked about how she was engaged to Muhammad at age of 6, right?
But that's engagement, which isn't marriage. So.
Okay, so but Aisha says she was engaged at age 6, and the consummation is close to 9 for many scholars. You're saying
the consummation was post-puberty. The fact is they were adults.
Are you aware? Are you aware that puberty can happen, like precocious puberty happens, for example, at 4 or 5?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Matt. I thought we were going to have this conversation about what is your God, why do you believe him, what's your evidence, and so on. I didn't think we were going to have this sort of character assassination type conversation.
Well, you said God is morally good, and yet from what you're saying, God has appointed a messenger that is not morally good.
Can I have, let's say, 20 seconds to say something? Is that okay?
Well, not until you tell me. Would it be okay for Muhammad to have sex with a 9-year-old if she was post-puberty?
I don't think these are particularly.
I'm sorry. I don't care what you think, Tim. I would like for you to answer the question. Is it morally permissible for Muhammad to have sex with a 9-year-old post-puberty?
A adolescent woman at that time, I don't think there's a problem at that time with the situation that was going on.
What do you mean? What do you mean? So what do you mean by at that time with the situation going on? What situation makes it permissible for an adult male to have sex with a 9-year-old?
Are we going to talk about God at any point? Because this moral argument just means
I don't know. No. Say, Tim, I'm going to mute you. I don't understand why you're avoiding the discussion. You're saying that the best axiom is that there is no God but Allah, and that his messenger, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God. And I asked you if God was morally good, and you said yes. And I'm trying to figure out how a morally good God could set up a situation where an adult who has sex with a child is his messenger, because I see an inconsistency there. And I was wondering why you don't see an inconsistency there. And you seem to be saying there's no inconsistency because back at that time, something about that made it permissible. And so I'm asking you the follow-up question, which is, what is it that was happening at that time that makes it permissible for an adult to have sex with a child?
Right. Well, so you've misunderstood my position then. So my position is that God is indeed morally just, but he's also all-knowing and all-wise, and it's up to him to judge, not me.
Okay. But I have no reason to think that God exists or is all-knowing or is all-wise. And I reject your assertion that an all-knowing, all-wise moral being would pick a pederast as his messenger.
You're not interested in my position, my arguments, how I came from being atheist to Muslim in the first place. None of that. You just want to focus on this.
No, I'd like you to answer this, and then we can move on to what your justification is for thinking there's God. But if your claim is that God is good and he picked a pederast as his messenger, I'd like you to explain what justifies that.
Well, I told you it's not up to me to judge.
It is up to you to judge. You're the one who has determined that God is good, and I don't see the thing that you're talking to as good.
No, the axiom is God is good. Do you know how axioms work?
I know how axiom works. I reject your assertion that God is good because there are things that are in conflict with that.
That's fine. If you reject the axioms of Newton's theory, then you can't play the game of physics.
Well, I'm not playing the game of let's believe some bullshit and advocate for pederasty as a good thing, am I?
Neither am I.
Okay.
You're just
is God good? Is God good? Is God good?
That is one of his attributes. Near enough. It's a bad translation, but it's one of his attributes.
Is it consistent with a being that is good to pick a pederast as his messenger?
It's consistent with him picking people when he knows much more than us about whether or not that was a viable or correct or wise situation and thing to do.
Since you asked me if I know what an axiom is, do you know what a valid and sound argument is?
Yes, a valid argument
Cool.
is one that follows.
That's a yes. Or,
structurally
do you know what a
and
yes or no question is?
Yes.
Cool. Present a valid and sound argument to defend the claim that God is good.
It simply doesn't work like that. The axiomatic system is the 99 names and attributes of Allah. You take those as part of the axiom.
No, I'm sorry,
you take
Tim.
the Shahada.
And let's try this. Present a valid and sound syllogism that shows God exists.
I said it was an axiomatic system. The syllogism is a very small subset of that.
Tim, you're not listening. You pointed out rightly that you're taking God as good is an axiom. I'm saying present a valid and sound syllogism that God exists. Is it just an axiom for you? Is it just an axiom for you that God exists?
Do we need to agree on the definition of God before we do this or not?
I'm sorry this is so difficult for you. Is God's existence merely axiomatic, or can you demonstrate it?
So I graduated in theoretical physics, and when I say I'm using an axiomatic framework, I mean it in exactly the same way as when I studied physics. You take the axioms, you run through the theory.
I didn't ask what you studied. I didn't ask what you studied, and physics is irrelevant to this. I asked, is God an axiom for you, or is God something you can demonstrate? Why the fuck can you never answer a question straightforward?
It's an axiom, and it is also something which I can show.
Then I have zero interest, Tim. I have zero interest in people calling in to say that God is axiomatic. You can fuck right off with that. I reject your assertion.
You just won't listen to it, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're saying I don't want to listen. You just said that God was axiomatic. Is it something beyond that?
There are inductive arguments for it.
Tim, I specifically asked you and gave you a chance to present a valid and sound syllogism that demonstrates that God exists. Did I ask you to present a valid and sound syllogism for God's existence? Yes or no?
You did, and I said I don't have one and I don't need one.
Correct, because you're saying, shut up. Are you saying that God is an axiom that you accept?
Yes.
I don't give a fuck, nor am I interested in wasting my time or my audience's time on people who call in to say God is just so. Goodbye.
Well, that's not my position.
That's what an axiom is. You need to go look up what an axiom is. An axiom is something that you're accepting as a presupposition. It is something that is not demonstrated. And I have no use for useless propositions about gods that you think are good and yet put child raping pederasts as their messenger. And no matter how much you'd like to avoid it, merely asserting that you have God and his messenger as a fucking axiom should be almost as big of a source of embarrassment for you as what it is that you are willing to excuse in the moral framework while pretending that you have some fucking high ground. Fuck you, fuck Allah, fuck Muhammad, fuck off. Hi, welcome to the Hang Up.
So before we wrap up, while we've still got some time here, why don't we do one last big push for donos from people, some grassroots donos. So let me get our timer back up here. Let's see what time it is. It is 8:50 as I'm speaking. I know it's going to be a little bit delayed for you guys coming in, but let's go. Let's say at 8:53. So you give you guys 2 minutes to get all your $5 donos prepped. And then at 8:53, so Matt, watch the clock so that way we can promote exactly at 8:53. Thank you. So you can go in, click the little donate button, the little hands in the shape of a heart that are on the bottom right side of the chat window. When you hover over, it says donate now. You can go through, get all your credit card info in, get it all prepped up so that right when the clock says 8:53. Well, okay, it's 8:53 Central Time where we are, so consider your time zone. But in exactly 2 minutes from right now, we will send all those $5 super chats. So
hold off.
Yep.
I'll say now, and I get it, you guys are on a delay, but at 8:53, we'll say now, everybody with their $5 chats, get them ready, queue them up. We'll flood the channel with them. And since we're not doing super chats today, Darrel, you have 90 seconds starting right now to tell people why they need to donate to Recovering from Religion.
Oh, nothing like taking me by surprise when I was trying to do something else. Well, I think you should donate to Recover from Religion because we would not have helped 900 people with what you heard what Rob said. Rob would not have been able to help 900 people if we hadn't had our system set up and ready to accept calls from everywhere. We get calls from almost every country on the planet sooner or later. And I read to you earlier, we had calls from Italy and from France, chats from Estonia. We can't help people if we don't have this system. This system costs money. So that's why we have to have. By the way, last year, part of your donations helped us open an entire new chapter of Recovering from Religion in Australia. And Australia is now a registered charitable organization in Australia, and they're providing massive amount of services now to New Zealand and Australia that we couldn't have provided before. And this coming year, we're going to be moving into Europe. We're literally going to open the door we're giving a special conference on mental health for apostates in London in October 1st. We just solidified this last week. So part of your donations are going to go to helping us raise awareness for Recovering from Religion.
All right.
And other
4,
things.
3.
Get ready, everyone.
2, 1.
Go. Hit donate. Hit that donate button.
I'm looking at all of them. We're at $5,036 out of 60,000 right now. Get those $5 donations flowing in. $5,000.
There's a little bit of a delay.
I'm going to call them out as they come in. I'm watching both there on the line. At this point,
here we go.
Now is when you guys heard me say it, and boom, the donations start coming in. $5,050, $5,070. I should be a damn auctioneer and backwards. Let's just keep raising this up. $5,090, $5,090 going once, $5,090, $5,095. We're almost at $5,100. We are now over $5,100. The donation thing can't even keep up with you guys. It's amazing. $5,120 right now. I'm telling you, $5,250 is not far enough. So you guys got work to get to $5,250. I mean, $5,500 to come in an entire $500 over what the initial goal that was set up would be, that'd be peanuts. It's really easy. Here's the thing.
There we go.
We live in a world right now where recovering from religion is increasingly more necessary, and where some of the other resources that people might have are increasingly in threat. And once the Project 2025 people find out how effective recovering from religion can be, they might well become a target too, and need this to make sure that they can keep running a hotline, to keep running a website, so that when you go to your Christmas dinner and you are pissed off at Aunt Josephine and how she wants to call you out for your sexual immorality and why can't you just do what Jesus wanted to do, you will have somebody to potentially call and talk to help you through that moment. That is one of the many things that you can count on, is that as long as we continue to support recovering from religion, they will continue to be there to support us. That's how this works. It's socialism, kind of, except that you guys are donating in part because there are people who may not be able to. Thanks so much. Somebody just donated $500. We are at 5,007. Oh, that is
our
probably
matching.
the match.
$500 is from our matching donor.
Thank you so much to the matching donor. Huge help. You guys are incredible. Thank you so much. There's so many good donos there in that last run. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. All right. Last 5 minutes are all for you guys, and then we'll call it a night.
The Trump administration has canceled suicide prevention hotlines. They've canceled the LGBTQ hotline. The Trevor Project and others are still up. I'm pointing out what Melanie's pointed out in chat. That's not what RFR is. But having more resources where people who are marginalized and under attack, specifically in the name of and on behalf of religion, is going to be absolutely critical to standing up and fighting back. They're gonna do everything they can to censor us. They're gonna try to take away the ability for us to do any shows like this, to raise any money like this. This is not hyperbole. I don't tend to go off about, we've talked about the possibility of civil war. We talked about the problems here and there. There is a non-zero chance that all of this, all of your access to information, all of your access to support networks, all of the access to all of this could be shut down because we are not right-minded. We are not in line. And first they came for, then they came for, then they came for, and then when they came for me, there was nobody else. It's time to step up now and say so. Huge thank you to Dr. Darrel Ray and to everybody who volunteers at Recovering from Religion. Now is a time. Thank you guys so much for starting off the pre-fundraiser weekend by hanging out here with us tonight, taking calls, and raising. We're closing in on almost $6,000 now. It's at $5,740 in our very first night. You guys are great. That's about $5 per person that's watching. And for those of you who are unable to give, we are thankful that you are here and participating in the chat and making all of this worthwhile. For the people who donated financially, thank you so much. You are critical. You are essential to making this work. For those of you who just donated your time and your attention, you are also critical, because if there aren't people paying attention, spreading the word, letting people know RFR is there for you. RFR is not, hey, let's lecture you on science. Let's do this. This is meeting people where they are and filling a need that might not exist if not for the harm done by religion. Dr. Marlene Winnell has talked about religious trauma syndrome. It's not in the DSM. Whether or not it should be in the DSM is not up to me. I don't even know. But fundamentally, people walk out of their religion worse off initially. They've lost their support network. They've lost their family. They've lost their community. They feel alone. They've been ostracized. They have been othered. They have been attempted to be guilted, to be shamed into coming back, into continuing a part of this. And they don't know where to turn. They don't know who to talk to. And if the secular community doesn't provide landing spaces and avenues for those people to have conversations, things will get worse. But if we band together, alongside organizations like Recovering from Religion and others as well, and provide a support network, a communication network, a place where we can share stories, where people know they're not alone, where the bullshit that happened to them happened to somebody else. Here's how I got through it. Let me help you get through it. It reminds me of a story that I loved from Leo McGarry on The West Wing. Guy gets stuck in a hole, can't get out. Yells up at people passing by, hey, I'm stuck in this hole. Can you help me out? Hey, I'm stuck in this hole. Can you help me out? And people just keep walking and walking. Finally, a friend of his jumps down in the hole. And he looks at him and says, what the hell's wrong with you? Are you an idiot? Now we're both stuck down here. And his friend says, yeah, but I've been down here before and I know how to get out. That's what Recovering from Religion is here to try to help all of us do. To get over the damage done from bullshit beliefs. The last caller advocating for Islam. That's the damage that irrationality backed with religion can do to a mind. It can make you make excuses for the worst things in the world. And it leaves people broken, but not defeated. We all need to lend a hand and help out. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight, for donating. Darrel Ray, huge thank you.
Yeah,
and we look forward to seeing you all weekend.
I want to say thank you to everybody myself. I was working on getting that donors money in when you got me. But one last thing I want to say, if you could donate, that's great. If you can't donate, or even if you did donate, please like and amplify the images and things that you see on all the different social media about Recovering from Religion. Your friends need us, but they don't know about us, and you can tell them through your own likes and forwarding of some of the stuff that we put out. We have a huge social media team doing great work, so we're really trying to put out the word and get more people aware of what we do. Thanks for having me on tonight. Matt. As always, I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. That's the credits rolling. Don't forget, tomorrow night we're on my channel to do some more stuff, some fun stuff. We don't even know what the hell we're doing yet, but all of that will also be tax-free donations directly to Recovering from Religion. Friday night's Golden Mike Show. I'm sure Jimmy and others will be here. I'm still waiting on details. That will be 100% donation to Recovering from Religion, as will the entire event on Saturday. Find out more by going to alignmerch.com and patreon.com/calltheline. See you all the next 4 days. Give.